Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by the Carolus Insurance Agency at www.thecarolusinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com. The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by the Carolus Insurance Agency at www.thecarolusinsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.
Not bad, oh yeah.
What's that? You want to get them?
What do you need?
The money was she left them upstairs.
Okay, Frank, you have the first hearing.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a public hearing on petition or communication C30. I have to read it, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests the City Council of the City of Leominster on behalf of the pursuant to the authority granted by Chapter 82, Sections 21 and to 24, and Chapter 79 of the Massachusetts General Laws as submitted, and any and every other power and authority which is hereunto in any way enabling, take by eminent domain, permanent and temporary easements for any and all purposes for which the public ways are used in the city of Leominster, including without limitation for the construction and maintenance of rights-of-way, sidewalks, drainage, utilities, and other structures and/or appurtenances, and/or for any other and all other purposes and uses incidental or related to within parcels of land located on or near Lancaster Street and Union Street, as shown on a plan entitled 2025 Leominster Street City Layout and Easement Plan, and a plan entitled 2025 Union Street City Layout and Easement Plan, both dated November 21st, 2025, and prepared by GCG Associates, Inc., copies of which are on file with the city clerk, as said plans may be amended and land within 200 feet of said parcels, which temporary easements shall be for a term of 5 years, and in connection thereof, adopt and execute an order of taking to acquire said rights and easements and award damages for the taking to the owners identified in Schedule A attached to the order of taking, with the specific amounts awarded to each owner being set forth in Schedule B attached to but not recorded with said order of taking, and any and other documents related thereto, and further take any and all actions as may be necessary and appropriate to accomplish the foregoing. And this was first came to the City Council at 11:24, and a public hearing was scheduled for tonight at 6 p.m. And I am Frank Ardinger. I'm the chair of the City Properties Committee, and Councilor Brandon Robbins is the second, and Councilor Robert Toss is the third. And at this point, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this petition, or this communication? Okay, thank you.
Rosemary.
Would you please identify yourself?
Good evening. My name's John Roseberry. I'm the senior engineer at the DPW. Here to discuss the DOT flood project. This is the
John,
first.
is your mic on?
Just
Is it-
draw it a
is it
little
on?
closer.
A little
Yeah.
closer?
Yeah, there
Okay,
you go.
sorry.
It's okay.
And so this is one of the DOT flood projects. There's 3 in total. This is the first one, Union Street and Lancaster Street. The Lancaster Street one is the reconstruction of the retaining wall at the corner of Malvern Street. And the Union Street is the slope stabilization and channel stabilization from the retaining walls that fell into the brook during the flood. So there's a total of 12 easements that need to be taken, 4 temporary, which have a term of 5 years, and 8 permanent. The project has been designed, funded, and will be constructed by Mass DOT. It's a $1.8 million project. That's really the gist of it. It's not a big project, and all of the abutters have been notified. The written offers have gone out, so I haven't had a whole lot of questions, except when it's going to be done.
Hey, there won't be any road construction associated with this, will there? Like tearing up the
No.
Lancaster Street?
No, they might not even have to close a lane.
Okay.
Because it's pretty, Lancaster Street right-of-way is fairly wide at that point.
Yep.
Okay.
So all of that, they'll have 2 lanes open.
Okay.
Union Street, they might have to close a lane just to move equipment around, but generally, it'll be very temporary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other members of the committee have any questions? Councilor Chauncey?
Yes, how were the abutters notified? How did they get notified for these?
Once DOT gets me the 75% design plans, I send out a letter to the owners telling them that a project is going. It's all certified mail with return receipts. And then it's the same thing as happens during the appraisal process.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Robbins?
No questions.
No
Thank you.
questions? Councilor Salazar?
Yeah, thank you. John, when do you see this, the Lancaster Street one specifically starting?
DOT tells me in the spring.
Oh, in the spring, and how long is it, do you know?
I don't see it being much more than a 3 or 4 month project.
That long? I mean, that seems really long for, I'm just
Well,
thinking about the
that's-
retaining wall.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have to excavate everything, and then they have to tie in the existing wall that's belongs to 12 Malvern Street.
Right.
So everything has to get married back together.
Okay. And the homeowners on that corner, they're okay with the easements, the permanent easements?
I believe so. I know one of the 6 Malvern Street owners are here.
Okay.
I've kept them informed of everything along the way.
Okay. Yeah, all right, I see them here, and I don't see any unhappy faces, so. Oh, okay, thank you.
Councilor Frida?
John, are most of these easements for construction, storage, and is it a use easement?
They're going to, beyond the temporary easements, it's going to be easements on Lancaster Street will be for the wall,
Okay,
to maintain in perpetuity the wall. On Union Street, it'll be to maintain the slope. And then there's also the head wall at Union Street on the culvert needs attention also. So there's a separate easement for those. That's why that has a couple more easements.
okay. And these are pretty necessary projects.
Yes, well, the wall, yes, I think the Simmons are tired of looking at it. And the other one it's more of an environmental concern. The old granite block retaining walls fell into the channel, and if we get another big storm, and it's just gonna cause erosion in different spots than it does now. So it'll be good to get that all cleaned up and something we can maintain.
Councilor Cormier?
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to point something out as well, that earlier in the year, and I can't remember the date, I tried to look really quick on my phone. There was also a public hearing about this up in the auditorium. And I was there as well, and I talked to the homeowners, and there was no concerns then, so I don't know if anything's come up, but if not, there was a public hearing, so everybody had a chance to, hear in depth what they plan to do, give any feedback, concerns, anything of that nature too. So I know I was kind of surprised at how long some of this has been taking, but at least we're moving forward in some fashion. And I think when it's done, everybody should be happy. I haven't heard any concerns, so.
That was April 1st, 2025, and I've forgotten all about it, but thanks for the reminder. That's great. At this point, is there any other counselors?
Quick one. John, the 1.8 million that you just talked about, is that for both projects? For the 2 of them or the 3?
This is considered one project, Union and Lancaster.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The next other project was going to be the Pleasant Street culvert at
Yep.
208.
Yep.
And then DOT is doing their own on Mechanic Street to repair the sidewalk over the Manusnack Bridge, or Manusnack Brook, rather.
Okay, so the 1.8 million is for
Just this.
Lancaster and Union Street?
Yep.
Okay. And this was all flood damage, right?
Yes.
It's all
It's,
from
yep.
that flood, okay. Thanks.
Councilor Bonanza?
John, it sounds like this also solves some ambiguity as to who owns that wall, right?
The city does.
Yeah.
Yep.
But now it's clear from the easement, right? I mean,
Yes, it's going to be a brand-new wall. It's going to be constructed within the right-of-way of Lancaster
so that
Street.
should comfort the homeowners that they don't have any responsibility for that going forward, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Any other councilors? At this time, I'll have to go to the public. Is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of this communication? For a second time, is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of the communication? And for a third and final time, is there anyone that wants to speak in favor? Is there anyone that wants to speak against the communication? And for a second time, is there anyone that wants to speak against the communication? And for a third and final time? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Council Arndinger. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess we're all set to start the 6:20 public hearing.
This is a public hearing on petition 24-26. Michael McEwen on behalf of Kurt Owenesian, plant manager of Highline Wallen, 163 Pioneer Drive, Leominster, Mass. Request a petition to obtain an above-ground fuel storage license for a 35,000-gallon above-ground storage tank to replace the 10,000-gallon tank currently at 163 Pioneer Drive and enlarge the containment area. So this is before the Legal Affairs Committee. Regular was on our agenda November 10th. We had a public hearing open tonight. And is anybody here from that? Okay, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do you want to tell your name and address for the record, and then you can tell us about the project?
I'm Kurt Owenesian. I represent 163 Pioneer Drive. I'm the plant manager at that establishment. And what we would like to do is install a larger capacity tank and deactivate the existing tank. And what comes with the new tank, greater capacity, I'll have less truck traffic, less opportunities for, points of failure, if you will. But additionally, with the new tank, there's greater safety features involved with it. So there'll be better, more modern containment dike around it. And then as well, there'll be level indicators, redundancy and level indicators, and electrically operated valves versus, the current state. So it is, safety upgrades. It's part of, process safety management, continuous improvement. And so there is an existing, license for the above-ground storage tank. But I need to amend it for, the volume that'll be in this propylene glycol tank.
And is it being put in the same location? The
Yes.
larger tank is being placed in the same location?
Yes. But there'll be containment that will be added around that tank.
And what exactly is that? Is that a fence? Is it concrete?
No,
Is
it's a concrete containment that, there's a calculation for the volume that it has to be able to handle if there's a failure.
Okay, anything else? Any other details you want to share with us?
No.
Okay, all right. I'm going to go to my committee. Councilor Tossi, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one. The fire department did a walkthrough. Everything
Yes.
turned out fine?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Kurt, are you decommissioning the old tank?
When the new tank goes in, it will be decommissioned, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so give me a little background on what's the process from transferring from one to the other.
Well, we would run the existing 10,000 gallon, we would just run it empty, and then when it's decommissioned, if it's uninstalled, you would do a triple rinse through hazardous material disposal, like a Safety Clean or a Clean Harbors, But there's a formal process for decommissioning the tank.
Okay, so you need to build in the new containment unit, the new tank. And this is going to be alongside the soon-to-be decommissioned tank?
Yes.
Okay. So what do we have in place that's going to secure that transfer? That we have, you're going to have a new contamination, I'm sorry, with a new 35,000 gallon tank. What's to protect that during the transfer from the old one to the new one? What do we have ensured that there's nothing that's going to happen?
You mean transferring fluid from the old tank
Yes.
to the new tank?
Yes.
No, ma'am. I'm sorry. So we would run the fluid out. We would run and manufacture and produce out of the old tank till it's empty. You decommission. You would already have the new tank live and commissioned, and there's a series of tests that you'll do, to ensure its stability. Then when you start bringing in new raw material, you would just go to the new tank.
Okay,
We wouldn't transfer from tank to tank.
okay.
That's not
No, I just wanted to
desirable.
make sure, because we had another situation a few years ago where it was a different company, nothing to do with what you're doing. But that was somebody wasn't paying attention when somebody was pumping something out, and it created a monster. So I just wanted to make sure.
No,
We're
and so fortunately, this is in a, we do automotive fluids, it's seasonal, RV antifreeze and windshield wash fluid. And this tank is for propylene glycol, which is one of the ingredients for the RV antifreeze. That season is all but gone. So we've been monitoring the inventory and canceling trucks so that we're able to do the conversion without having to go from tank to tank.
Okay, and you said that it's going to be a reduction in the amount of trucks. Do you have an estimate for us? What's a regular?
Well, for instance, so again, seasonally, it's a very specific window every year for this product, but one tanker truck is upwards of maybe about 7,000 gallons. So I'd have to get 5 of those to fill that, whereas you could get one rail car that comes in and would be 30,000 gallons. So you could eliminate, in essence, 5 truck trips in and out.
Okay, all right.
You could, but is that your plan?
Oh, yes, because a tanker truck is a lot more
Okay.
expensive.
Okay, good. In terms of the decommissioning process, is that supervised, inspected
Yes.
by?
So we have corporately a project engineer that's very specific. Mike McCune is the other person listed on the agenda here. So that's who I work with corporately. He's the senior project engineer for very specifically process safety management for our corporation.
Right, and then are there any follow-ups? I mean, by the, I don't know if there are any follow-ups by local inspection authorities like the
Yes.
fire department?
Fire department, yes.
Comes in and does a final
Yes.
inspection? Okay,
Yep.
on the decommissioned tank and the new one that's up and running?
Yes. There'll be electricians that have to do their portion. It's all, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Counselor David Cormier?
Thank you. The tank, the 10,000 gallon tank that you're retiring, do you know the approximate age of it?
I don't know that.
And that's above ground currently?
Yes.
Right? And did you ever consider when you were wanting to put this new tank in, going below ground?
Below ground is my understanding, I don't know it as intimately as some of the engineers that I work with, but below ground it's a lot different of a path to go down to be able to install it, maintain it, the permitting, et cetera.
So
And there's wetlands that abut it, so we gotta be careful with excavation and things of that nature.
Okay. So it's all going to be above ground, and I'm assuming it's in a very isolated area where, it's...
It's right on our rail track, so we have a rail track on the backside of our building.
What kind of protection's around it? Is there any kind of protection that's around the tank?
There'll be a full containment dike, as we call it, so it's a reinforced concrete, pit that will accommodate, X amount of gallons of fluid if there were a failure.
Okay.
But again, all of the tanks, to include this new tank going in, there's all upgrades with it. There'll be safety interlocks. And so if it's not grounded effectively, it won't even allow pumps to turn on. If it was running and a ground were to break, there's an ohms reading and it will kill the pumps. So there's a whole, much higher degree of safety considerations with this upgrade versus, when that first tank went in.
All right, okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the council have any questions? No, I have a question. Mr. Roseberry, can I just ask you, are you aware of this at all? We did refer to the DPW, but have you weighed in on this?
We didn't have any comments.
No comments?
No comments.
Okay. All right. Okay. At this point, I'll go to the public. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak either in support of or in opposition to 24-26?
Hi,
Would you please give your name and address for the
Haley
record?
Brady, 200 Harvard Street. I just want to ask, the past 2 quarters, are you currently in compliance with EPA? I happened to just be on the site and noticed the past 2 quarters for reporting Highline War and was in violation.
So there is a prior legacy EPA citation, and it was related to...
That was years ago. That was
Yes.
2022, though. I'm talking the past 2 quarters.
I guess I would have to ask what you mean by in compliance. I don't understand.
So, forgive me because I don't know the ins and outs of chemical permitting and what you have to do. The way it was kind of listed on the site seemed like you needed to report findings quarterly or something along those lines.
There is a broad spectrum of reporting that needs to be done on the environmental side and the safety side, and as it stands right now, we're compliant with reporting.
Okay, all right. I just happened to be on the EPA site recently and noticed they had something flagged for the past 2 quarters that Highline Warren hadn't complied. Maybe that's my misread, but just wanted to bring that up and bring that to the council's attention. Thank you.
Do you know if those flags are for the Leominster location?
I don't. I would have to see what it is. I do know that this location, in the past, I've been here 3 years now, and it's prior to me that there was some form of a violation, and as I sit here now, we're compliant.
Okay. Okay, for a second time, I'll go to the audience. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak either in support of or in opposition to 24-26? For a third and final time, is there anybody who'd like to speak on petition 24-26? Okay, seeing no further comment by the public, we did get a referral back from the fire department. Mr. Roser said the DPW is not weighing in. Do you know that you're not weighing in, or?
No, we thought it was more of a fire department issue.
Right,
It's behind the building, it's not near the driveway,
okay,
or anything like that. So
okay,
it really wasn't under our purview, really.
okay. At this point, I would like to get the public hearing closed. I just want to do a double check on any EPA issues, problems, flags. So my recommendation would be to keep the public hearing open. And I ask that you check with my committee.
Why don't, when we get to it on the agenda, we can do that?
Oh, okay, that's fine. So I'd like to keep the public hearing open, and we can discuss that when we talk about it later. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. This is 326, yeah. So continued public hearing on petition 3-26, Glenn Eaton, Executive Director, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. Request to amend the zoning ordinance to replace Article 15, accessory apartments, with a new Article 15 that complies with recently passed state law and make other changes to implement the new ordinance. So this was given regular course. We had opened a public hearing, I think, on September 8th. It's been continued. We had the MRPC down here before, talking about, or walking us through some of those changes. And Mr. Boyle went back to the MRPC, made some changes, I believe, then went to the planning board. So is anybody here tonight from the MRPC? No. Okay. My plan is to, well, I'll go to the council. Does anybody have any questions on petition 3-26? No? Okay, I'll go to the public then. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on petition 3-26 about accessory departments, otherwise known as ADUs, accessory dwelling units? For a second time, is there anybody who'd like to comment on 326? And for a third and final time, is there anybody who would like to weigh in on petition 3-26? Okay. I would like to keep this public hearing open.
All right, again, we'll take it up. I just would say that ADU use in Leominster is not regulated currently. And,
Well, that's what we're trying to do, right?
well, that's the problem. We don't have any, you can build ADUs in Leominster, and right now we don't have any regulation.
Well, my understanding is that right now, or prior to the Massachusetts state law saying that they're allowable by right, they still have to get, people still have to get a building permit, or did prior to.
There are permissible regulations that a city or a town can adopt. That's what this is about.
Oh, exactly.
So,
That's
but right now, they are allowed, like any other community, but we don't have any of those regulations in place. So the
Right.
longer we kick this thing down the road, the more we put the public at risk.
I just want to make sure that I understand completely and fully what the changes are.
And, well, I mean, I will also say that as far as I understand, our contract with MRPC is done. So I'm not sure that they're going to come down here and explain it to us, so it's really incumbent upon us to figure this out at this juncture.
Right, no, I agree with that, and I had attended the planning board meeting when there was a presentation at the planning board, and the vice chair of the planning board had asked for a red line, and I'm not sure if she ever got one. That's what I asked for, because that would have been a very simple way. We had a detailed conversation and discussion, I think it was at a legal affairs subcommittee meeting, with Mr. Boyle here talking about this. And then some changes were going to be made, they were taken to the planning board, but I never got anything back that really identified what changes were made. So, again, my plan would be to keep this open, and I'd like to resolve it certainly sooner.
Okay, I'm just
Yep.
pointing that out.
That's good.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
all right, we'll move on to 9-26.
That's right. 9-26, Susan Shalafou Zephyr, Brandon Robbins, Councilors at Large, Ward 1 Councilor Robert M. Tossi, and 10 registered voters. Request to amend the zoning ordinance pertaining to MU2 zoning. So this is a continued public hearing, and this evening, I'll open tonight's public hearing with an email from the mayor. And this is dated today, December 8th, 2025 at 8:55 a.m. And it was sent to Council President Bonanza and the councilors. Good morning. Please see the attached from Elizabeth Wood. Her father passed away on Friday, so she is unable to be in attendance tonight. Over the past few months, she had the opportunity to travel to Maryland several times as he continued to decline. So as most people know, the planning director was supposed to be here this evening, and unfortunately, she has, a very sad circumstance, family circumstance that she has to deal with. So certainly I'd like to extend my condolences to the planning director. And, but, we will continue the public hearing, and we do have a lot of information. So the first thing that I will read into the, well, maybe I'll go through her letter first. The first thing that she had asked, and this was when she was going to appear on 11/24, and then had a conflict and could not come down on 11/24. But she did send her director's report. And this is the director's report that is the planning director she wrote and gave to the planning board. So it's to the planning board from Elizabeth Wood, dated 10/9/2025. And she asked that I read this into the public record. That's why I'm doing this. Regarding director's report, petition 9-26, Susan Shalafou Zephyr, Brandon Roberts, Councilors at Large, Ward 1 Councilor Robert M. Tossi, 10 registered voters, request to amend the zoning ordinance pertaining to MU2 zoning. Director's report. This petition, 9-26, is a request to amend the zoning ordinance pertaining to the MU2 zoning district. You will recall that on 12/16/24, the Planning Board voted 7-0 to recommend to the City Council petition 15-25, a petition to recommend a zoning amendment pertaining to the MU2 zoning district. The Planning Board is advisory only, with the City Council having the final say on all zoning amendments. On 2/10/25, during the second reading of the ordinance, the City Council voted 7-1 to adopt petition 1525. I will provide the facts to the Planning Board at the 10/20/25 hearing so that the Board can make a recommendation for petition 9-26. The current petition 9-26, will undo the sentiment of petition 1525, which was put forth after a lengthy, well-researched public process and was vetted via 3 public bodies: the Housing Committee, the Planning Board, and the City Council. Before I get further in all of the effort that went into this prior petition, 15-25, I wish to outline why the MU2 zone was amended in the first place. Then I will outline the public process that was carried out. Next, I will inform you of what could happen if the most recent petition 9-26, is passed. History. Dating back to 2012, the MU2 zone allowed for mixed-use development, including multifamily housing. The purpose of the MU2 zone, starting in 2012, was described as follows, quote, to provide for the coordinated and mixed development of institutional, multifamily residential, business, and/or industrial uses, end quote. Per the dimensional chart in 2012, the density requirements allowed the construction of multifamily units to the density of 1 unit per 3,500 square feet of lot area by right. With a special permit, the density was increased to 1 unit per 2,500 square feet of lot area. As you can see clearly, the multifamily development as a concept in the MU2 zone is not a new idea. Fast forward to current times. A housing crisis was declared by former Governor Charlie Baker and reaffirmed by current Governor Maura Healey. Leominster, along with the rest of the state, is facing this crisis. Severely affected are young people who grow up in Leominster and want to stay in Leominster after they move out of their parents' homes. Also severely affected are seniors hoping to sell their current homes and downsizing. Every prospective home buyer in between is affected, as there is simply a shortage of all varieties of housing. Prices are rising and housing becoming unaffordable as the shortage persists. Public process. In order to address the local housing crisis, the administration for the City of Leominster tasked me, the Planning and Development Director, with forming a housing committee starting in August of 2023. In order to get a broad array of representation and opinions, a variety of people were invited to serve on the committee. I invited planning board members, city councilors, realtors, developers, city staff, and the mayor joined the committee to work towards solutions. The authority of the Housing Committee was advisory to the Planning Board, City Council, and city administrators only. Early on, I applied for a District Local Technical Assistance Grant, DLTA, to receive funds for a consultant to help the Housing Committee with its work. In April of 2024, we were awarded funds to be used to consult with the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission for services. The staff from MRPC, including Planning Director Karen Chapman and Principal Planner Joseph Boyle, guided the city on how to address the housing crisis. They assisted us with the state-mandated MBTA zoning changes and also began work on creating other solutions as to how to create more housing in Leominster. The Housing Committee continued to meet and throw out ideas to the Planning Board and City Council. A number of reforms came out of this, including allowing upper story dwelling units by right in the BB district, and a proposal to change dimensional requirements in the RB and RC zones. During the City Council and Planning Board's review of the latter proposal, it was made clear by policymakers that there was little support or enthusiasm to change the zoning in the city's residential districts in a manner that would meaningfully increase the potential for new housing growth. This message was further emphasized by a visit by the mayor to a committee meeting, at which he indicated that pursuing reforms to allow more housing in business districts would be a more viable path. In response, MRPC staff began investigating options for increasing the residential development potential of various business districts in the city. One of the first proposals before the Housing Committee was to facilitate residential development in the MU2 zoning district by allowing residential uses by right, softening some internal dimension requirements, and by eliminating the requirement for additional business development before the residential development could proceed. The MU2 district had originally created to set aside an area of town for intensive development necessary to meet the city's needs. Initially, this included a vision of large-scale commercial, industrial, and multifamily residential. When this zoning was developed, Leominster was still enjoying the commercial building boom that had made it the region's primary shopping center. In this pre-housing crisis era, the city acted to protect the district from being built out for residential use by requiring that it be mostly used for business and industry, deliberately capping its residential potential. A sizable amount of big box commercial development was built under this original zoning. By the 2020s, however, the city's situation had changed. The demand for commercial space had significantly declined owing to the growth of online shopping and working from home, while the housing shortage that first began in Greater Boston had spread to the Massachusetts region. In the contemporary era, residential development has become a much higher priority in Leominster. The MRPC developed a number of strategies for promoting residential development in Leominster's commercial districts, including rezoning some commercial districts to Business B in order to promote their redevelopment into mixed-use districts, redrawing the boundaries of some commercial districts to exclude existing homes so they would be conforming uses within residential districts, coordinating with owners to develop redevelopment plans for declining regional retail areas using residential development to revitalize them as walkable mixed-use neighborhoods, allowing residential development to proceed in the MU2 district. Of all of these reforms, redesigning the MU2 district to be a location where more intensive residential development is the most likely to lead to a significant number of units becoming available in the near future. Making these changes was deemed appropriate for a number of reasons. The city of Leominster had already set this land aside for intensive development. New residential development is unlikely to have impacts on nearby areas that are greater than the office and industrial plant uses envisioned under the pre-existing commercial and industrial zoning. The district is geographically separated from existing residential neighborhoods. Its business development potential has been significantly eroded by the real estate market. Some key changes that were proposed to the MU2 district by the Housing Committee are as follows. Delete the following. The multifamily housing component of a mixed-use project may not commence until the non-residential portion of the project is at least 60% complete, taking into consideration buildings previously constructed as part of a mixed-use project. Remove the requirement for a special permit for increased density multifamily housing developments. The density was also increased from 2,500 square feet per unit, that was actually with a special permit, to 2,000 square feet per unit, and that was actually now by right. There has been much consternation from the opposition stating that the special permit requirement should not have been removed. This was deliberately removed as a way to remove hurdles for developers wishing to do multifamily developments. It was not an error. The requirements for a site plan for developments producing 4 units or more was retained. With the site plan process, proposals are advertised on the planning board agenda, which is posted in City Hall and on the city's website. Abutters are not notified during the site plan process, but open meetings are held and the developer is required to follow a rigid site plan criteria. As was stated earlier, a lengthy process was followed for the passage of the original petition 15-25. The mayor's office collated a time frame of the approval process and is attached to this memo, which clearly shows all the parties involved. Petition 9-26. As you are aware, there is a current site plan development proposal for a 308 multifamily development on 86 Orchard Hill Park. It is also scheduled as a continued open public hearing for the October 20th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. The application for this proposal was originally submitted on 3/31/25 after the passage and approval of Petition 15-25. With the introduction of Petition 9-26 to amend the MU2 zoning, staff has sought a legal opinion as to what would happen if the site plan for 86 Orchard Hill Park Drive were to pass and then the Petition 9-26 subsequently were to be adopted by the City Council. On 9/8/25, Attorney Brian Riley advised the following. Once a site plan for the project is issued, a subsequent zoning change will not be applicable unless construction for the project does not commence within 3 years of the approval. Massachusetts courts have held that a quote-unquote grandfathering protection applies as soon as the party has a vested right in the approval. If the developer wishes to expand or alter the project in the future, a special permit would be required, and the applicant would need to demonstrate that the proposed alteration would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Conclusion. In the end, the previous approval of multifamily development in the MU2 zone was a long process where we followed all of the city's guidelines and final approval was received from the City Council. The board and City Council and Mayor put a lot of effort and hard work in enabling more housing to serve the residents of Leominster. If at any point council members needed more information regarding the proposed petition 15-25, they could have requested that, and I would have been more than happy to research and provide answers. At the January 6, 2025 hearing where I presented petition 15-25, more information was not requested, and the council voted 8-1 to approve the petition. I stand by the efforts and the process that we're taking to initiate passage of the petition. Any barriers to housing put into place after, such as petition 9-26, will be moot, since the site plan application for the 308 housing units is already underway. It is not in the best interest of the city to approve petition 9-26 and to make the new approved 308 housing development a legal non-conforming use. I want to remind the board that we are merely making a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council makes all final decisions on amendments to the zoning ordinance. So that was Ms. Woods, that was the planning director's report to the planning board back in October. The next letter that I'm going to read is also from the planning director. Last week, or I think at our last meeting, or maybe shortly after our last meeting, the mayor had requested, Ms. Wood had confirmed that she would be coming down to tonight's meeting and answering questions during the public hearing. And prior to that, the mayor had asked that we submit questions in advance, which some of us did. So I submitted 19 questions, and Councilor Tossi submitted maybe 6, 7, I think. And I don't believe that anybody else submitted questions, but the councilor and I did. So this is dated, this is from the Office of the Planning Board, this is from the Planning Director, it's dated December 5th, so this would have been last Friday. Leominster City Council, dear members of the City Council, I am in receipt of your questions regarding petition 9-26. I have attached answers to Councilor Tossi's questions. I will not be answering the other list of 19 questions as I feel they are not relevant to the petition currently before the City Council. With respect to the original petition to change MU2 zoning, there were 9 public hearings prior to the vote on January 13th, 2025, at which the developer, Joseph Boyle, and myself, the developer, Joseph Boyle, and myself were available to answer questions. The parcel of land that is the subject of this petition had been slated for development since 1988 under former Mayor Perla. For 17 years, the city worked to get infrastructure from the mall at Whitney Field to Pioneer Drive. In the end, the $6 million project tied 115 homes immediately on or near Harvard Street into city sewer, along with 8 businesses at Pioneer Drive and 12 businesses at Orchard Hill Park. The mixed-use component on this land has existed since a zoning change in 2003 until MU2 was adopted in 2013. The changes the City Council voted on in January were clearly stated by Council Shalafu Zephyr at the January 13th meeting. The council proceeded to vote that night to approve the petition and voted 2 subsequent times on first and second readings with no additional questions. Over the past few months, my office has responded to well over 200 inquiries, and the grant administrator has responded to a FOIA request in which 140 documents were provided. The council has all the minutes and agendas of the Housing Committee. I have also shared my 4-page director's report with the City Council. Early this morning, November 5th, my father passed away in Maryland. I was grateful for the time I was able to spend with him over the past couple of months as he continued to decline. Next week, I will be tending to funeral arrangements for him and will be unable to attend the meeting on Monday night. I strongly believe that with over a year of meetings and public hearings, the hundreds of documents that have been provided, and the in-person opportunities for the council to ask questions, the information available is sufficient. Thank you. Sincerely, Elizabeth Wood. So then we come to the questions. I have my 19 questions. I'm not going to detail them. They cover, I've asked them in various ways during multiple hearings. They cover, the Housing Committee, they cover the process, they cover the January 13th meeting. They cover a variety of things. And I'm going to make sure that they will be in the, they're in the public record, so if anybody wants a copy of my questions, you can certainly email me, and you'll be able to get them through the clerk's office. Councilor Tossi does have some questions, and Ms. Wood, the planning director, did respond to Councilor Tossi. So if you would like to read those and her answers for the public, that would be helpful.
Sure. Thank you. My first question was petition 1525, the original petition, vetted for worst-case scenario? And Mrs. Wood's answer was no. The board reviewed the proposal in the same manner as other zoning text amendments, which focus on alignment with state housing requirements and compatibility with surrounding uses. A formal worst-case build-out analysis was not performed. And my second question was, why wasn't this discussed? Because petition 1525 was a zoning text amendment, not a site-specific project. Build-out studies are typically done when a developer submits an actual proposal, not during zoning language phases. I then asked, was maximum potential build-out calculated? And her answer was no. We reviewed dimensional and density provisions, but we did not model maximum theoretical unit counts. And my next question was, how would this information be transferred if we had it? If such analysis had been conducted, it would typically be included in the planning board's written recommendation, but no formal build-out study was completed, none was transmitted. Another question. Why did the planning board vote 7-0 in 2024, but now 3 members support reverting to the old MU2 rules under petition 926? She answered, board members are responding to new information and significantly increased public input. The vote was taken at midnight after a 6-hour meeting. I am not allowed to ask members why they voted a certain way.
Councilor Tossi,
Yes.
I don't know, do you have any others?
Oh, we have to open our meeting.
Yeah, we're going to open our meeting. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll now take a roll call of the city councilors in attendance, starting with Councilor David Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Councilor Ardinger.
Present. I jumped the
For your
gun.
present twice. Councilor Noseworthy.
Present.
Councilor Tossi.
Present.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Councilor Robbins.
Present.
Councilor Frida.
Present.
I'll be recorded as present. All 9 members of the council are in attendance. Does the chairwoman of records have a report tonight?
We have no approval of records this evening, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Very well. I'll entertain a motion to go into
That
recess.
motion.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr, seconded by Councilor Robbins. All those in favor, please recognize the usual manner. We are in recess, and you can continue, Councilor Tossi.
Thank you. The next question was, under today's MU2 rules, high-density housing is allowed by right. What criteria is used to protect the residents and taxpayers? Site plan review. All large projects must undergo engineering, traffic, drainage, and environmental review before receiving approval. Existing state and local regulations, wetlands, stormwater, wastewater capacity, and traffic mitigation requirements still apply and limit excessive impacts. Number 3, location of MU2's district. MU2 is mapped primarily in commercial corridors already served by utilities and road infrastructure, which reduce spillover onto existing residential neighborhoods. My next question was, these criteria was chosen to encourage housing in appropriate areas while still regulating impacts through the development review process. How is this good for Leominster? MU2 expansion supports state housing goals, provides more rental and workforce housing options, and channels development into areas already equipped with utilities, limiting pressure on single-family neighborhoods. My next question, if most residents speaking publicly want to revert the zoning back, and most speakers supporting the new MU2 rules are attorneys or developers, why is keeping the new zoning still considered beneficial? The answer, zoning decisions must balance individual preferences with long-term citywide needs. Residents' concerns are real and noted, but so are the statewide housing mandates, regional shortages, and the city's responsibility to create opportunities for new housing. Developers and attorneys speak because they are directly involved in projects, but the zoning itself is intended to serve overall community needs, including housing availability, economic vitality, and maintaining compliance with state law. Next question. After the public reaction to petition 1525, are procedural changes needed for future zoning amendments? And the answer is, we always look to improve. However, no procedural changes are being sought currently. In order to change the way the zoning is enacted, the city charter would have to be amended, and we are not looking to do that. That's all.
Thank you. I have two other, well, actually three, things to read into the record this evening. One is an email that I received December 7th at 9:20 p.m. This went to everybody, I think, on the city council. And it's from Jerry Millette, Mr. Millette. Says, good day, city council members. I am writing to respectfully request that you reconsider and reverse the MU2 zoning change and restore the district's intended economic purpose. Losing MU2 comes at the cost of losing specific state grants as a gateway city. Giving away industry zoning removes our gateway status and signals that new businesses are not welcome. We can refer them to gateway cities such as Fitchburg, Devens, Worcester, and Marlborough that have industrial zoning. Think about it, we're a T-stop without industrial zoning. A recent analysis by policy researchers Elise Raposa and Andre Leroux outlines an important point. Communities like ours cannot thrive long-term if development prioritizes housing alone while neglecting the economic foundation that supports it. Their work reinforces a truth that applies directly to Leominster. Cities historically designed as economic hubs cannot sustain their growth or affordability without strong employment centers. Greg Lascotti is packing up, selling off buildings in Leominster, and moving on. Why? The MU2 district was initially intended to support precisely that role, a space for job-producing uses tied to existing transportation, infrastructure, and workforce potential. When the zoning shifted to residential dominance, Leominster moved further from the development model recommended for regional economic resilience. Without restoring employment opportunities, we risk becoming a bedroom community dependent on external markets and state funding to support our city budget, rather than a city with a self-sustaining economic engine. Reversing MU2 is not about opposing housing. It is about balancing housing with the job creation necessary to stabilize affordability, strengthen the tax base, and enable residents to achieve upward mobility rather than dependence. As the article's authors note, minor incremental fixes are not enough. Structural change requires intentional land use planning aligned with long-term economic strategy. The central message is clear. The path forward is not more scattered development or additional residential zoning alone, but intentional planning that restores employment opportunities and modern industry capacity. Leominster has the assets, location, transportation access, developable land, and workforce capacity. What we need now is zoning consistent with those strengths. The mayor needs to do a better job of attracting businesses. Marlborough welcomed a biotech company 2024 that built a new facility and hired several hundred people. It could have been us, but we're refusing to do what it takes in order to benefit one man, the landowner. The claim that industrial and commercial are dead is a myth. Worcester welcomed new industries. Fitchburg just reported in 2025 that a new big business is coming to the city with jobs. Reinstating MU2 as a job-generating district would realign city planning with evidence-based economic policy and position Leominster for future competitiveness rather than reactive development. I respectfully urge the council to take action and vote to restore MU2 as initially intended. Thank you for your consideration and service to the community. Sincerely, Jerry Millette, 58 Sky Lane in Leominster. He also included a link to the Massachusetts Institute for New Commonwealth, Gateway Cities Journal, What Makes a Gateway City. And this is a pretty quick read, and it's very interesting, and I think it's good. Most people probably in the audience have read it. But it's a good read, and it's quick. Next is, this is another message received. This was received today at 10:51 a.m., Monday, December 8th. And this was sent to the council president as well as city councilors. It says, "Good morning. I'm pretty sure the council knows my position on the MU2 amendment on tonight's agenda, so I didn't feel I needed to write in a statement. I did, however, want to provide a quick table mapping out the changes and what they mean in terms of the remaining land left for a quick reference. Would you mind sharing this document with members of the council? Thank you kindly, Haley Brady, 200 Harvard Street." So every city councilor, I think, got this today, right? Okay. And what Ms. Brady did was she put together a comparison of some of the highlights, the MU2 zoning comparisons, MU2 district, by right density, with special permit, rear yard and side, minimum setbacks, minimum landscape buffer. And this, again, I think really highlights what some of the concerns are. By right density went from 12.45, I think, units per acre, up to 21.78 units per acre. That's a 75%, increase in density. That's what that change did. It's a 9.33, additional units per acre, and that do the math, that's a 75% increase. With a special permit, the old zoning was 17.42 units per acre, and that was with the special permit, but in the new zoning, that special permit is removed. There is no special permit at all. Rear and side yard minimum setbacks, it used to be 100 feet abutting residential. It is now 15 feet abutting residential. Minimum landscaped buffer, it used to be 50 feet abutting residential, and now there is none. By right density, I'm not going to go through all of these, but Ms. Brady did put the comparison together for all of us to take a good look at. One thing that was also removed was the one-third stipulation. Previous zoning only allowed for residential on 43.45 acres. If previous zoning allowed for total build-out, it would be 900 units. So these points that Ms. Brady summarized from and compared, the two zoning petitions, I think is important, and just wanted to point that out. I think there's some easy math, but when you look at the numbers really tell the story. And my final document, I think, to read into the record this evening, this was in response to a question that Councilor David Cormier had asked at our 11/24 City Council meeting. And you had asked about non-conforming uses. Non-conforming, thank you, excuse me. So this, I did contact Brian Riley, and he responded. This is on November 21st, so it might have been the prior meeting to that. Hi, Sue, sorry for the delay. The term pre-existing, quotations, pre-existing non-conforming use of structure is the statutory term in Section 6 of General Laws, Chapter 40A of the Zoning Act. This is more commonly referred to as a, quote, grandfathered or protection use or structure. In that, if a use is begun in compliance with current zoning, it may continue even if the zoning ordinance is changed so as to make that use or structure either prohibited or requiring a special permit. Said another way, the pre-existed, in quotations, the pre-existing, the zoning change, and so it remains valid even though the, again in quotes, non-conforming with the new zoning. There can be nuances, but this is the general concept and the purpose of GL Chapter 40A, Section 6. A portion of section 6 is specific to a preliminary or definitive subdivision plan. If a definitive plan or preliminary plan followed within 7 months by a definitive plan is submitted to a planning board for approval under the subdivision control law, and written notice of such submission has been given to the city or town clerk before the effective date of the ordinance or bylaw, the land as shown on such plan shall be governed by the applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance or bylaw, if any, in effect at the time of the first such submission, while such plans are being processed under the subdivision control law. And if such definitive plan or an amendment thereof is finally approved for 8 years from the date of the endorsement of such approval, except in the case where such plan was submitted and approved before January 1st, 1976, for 7 years from the date of the endorsement of such appeal. For subdivisions, the above paragraph is also known as a zoning freeze, and that's in quotation marks, in that while a preliminary or approved subdivision plan may not actually be constructed yet, if its approval predated the zoning change, the previous zoning is frozen and the subdivision project is able to rely on the former zoning ordinance provisions. It may well be that the Orchard Hills owners filed this preliminary plan to take advantage of the zoning freeze. I know this will be frustrating to the petitioners, but the freeze and the quote-unquote pre-existing non-conforming status are in Chapter 40A specifically to give property owners such protections. While a pre-existing use does not have protection from subsequent zoning ordinance amendments, if the property wants to expand on the use that is protected, in general, they can only do so by getting the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, to find that the expansion will not, and these are in quotes, substantially more detrimental, will not be, quote, substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, end quote. This is also from Chapter 48, Section 6, but the city's zoning ordinance has a comparable provision as well. 12-3.3. The Board of Appeals may authorize under a special permit a non-conforming use of a building structure or land to be changed or to a specified use not substantially different in character or in its effect on the neighborhood or on property in the vicinity. Said board may also authorize under a special permit a non-conforming use of a building structure or land to be extended or a non-conforming building to be structurally altered, enlarged, or reconstructed, provided that such alteration, enlargement, or reconstruction is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming use or non-conforming building. So I think that answers your questions, right? Anything it looks to me, and we do have Attorney Parada here, but anything that has been, approved obviously by the planning board, is grandfathered. And then if the zoning is changed back, anything new that would be coming up, could still have that use. They would just have to apply for a special permit, probably, maybe. So, is that right?
Did we all get a copy of that?
Brian Riley's?
Yeah, did we get that?
I thought so. I'm not sure. Do you know it was a, I don't know, but I
get
can
a
certainly
copy.
make copies.
I don't have a hard copy here, but I got a copy on my email.
Okay. Thank you. But is that correct, Attorney Parada?
Yes, I think. Did he have in there that this subdivision plan ultimately has to be approved?
Yeah,
So to get the,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
Yep, that's all
Within
correct.
7 months.
Within
Yes.
7 months. okay.
Well, the definitive plan needs to be applied for within 7 months, and then ultimately that needs to get approved.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Counselor, or do you have more?
So in other words, there is a potential that right off the bat, it could be pre-existing non-conforming if we revert.
No.
No,
Is that
No,
correct?
that would not be,
no,
no.
if 926 was to pass, Riley's suggestion is that it wouldn't apply, the reversion would not apply
To that
to that
parcel.
project
Right.
I got you.
based on the preliminary subdivision plan, as long as Attorney Parada indicates, that it was turned into, applied for a definitive plan within 7 months, that was ultimately approved. Then it goes forward as a prior non-conforming use. Any prior non-conforming use can't be changed. You can't alter it, enlarge it without
A
a
special permit.
ZBA special permit,
Yep.
which is a standard of substantially more detrimental than the existing use.
Okay.
The other thing I'll add, if you're curious, repair is not included in that. So people sometimes question, can a repair happen without a special permit? That's excluded from that process.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and that satisfies your question? Counselor?
Yes.
Are you good? Okay,
Yes,
all right, good. So that's what I have I want to make sure I got all of those into the public record. So are there any counselors that have any questions based on any of the material that I just read in to the record? I mean, everybody did get copies of Ms. Wood's report to the planning board, her letter of Friday, right, and then I think you also got copies of all of the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Questions and Counselor Tossi's as well. Good.
Excuse me.
Counselor Odinger?
Yeah, just for clarification.
Yeah.
As I understand it right now, if we approve this change, it cannot affect any of the Orchard Hill projects, including the areas beyond what is currently, because there's a,
Just
I
what's
think-
covered by the preliminary plan.
so they're covered by the preliminary
Just
plans.
what's covered by the preliminary,
Huh?
just what's covered by the preliminary plan that's on file with the planning board.
Well, there are two preliminary plans that are filed, right? And I think the total of those is 82 acres.
So on those 82 acres, nothing can be done if we approve this to 926.
That's my understanding, but I'm going to ask Attorney Parada to answer that.
When you say nothing could be done, meaning this change won't affect those,
Right.
nor will it affect the project that's also been approved by site plan.
Right. Okay, so
He's saying correct, yeah.
Potentially.
potentially.
Well, I don't know what potentially means.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
It means they have to follow through with the definitive.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's right, they have to,
Within
that's
7
right, they have a
months,
certain
yeah.
time that they have to perform.
Within
That's right,
7
yeah.
months.
And that needs to be ultimately approved as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Right. So they go back to the planning board, they get the details approved with a definitive site plan.
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah, and if they follow through and they do that, then they're getting their plan
They're
approved.
grandfathered.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And on the site plan, as was mentioned, there's a 3-year substantial efforts to do the project. In other words, if you get your site plan approved and you don't do anything for more than 3 years, that protection would go away as well.
So they got 3 years to
Mhm.
do something, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Anybody else? Any other councils have any questions? No? Okay, I'm going to go, Council Frida, any questions? No? Okay. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to the public. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak on, either in support of, or in opposition to petition 9-26? If you come up to the microphone, please come up and state your name and address, please, for the record. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak on 9-26?
Donna Millette, 58 Sky Lane. I just wanted to offer some visual support. At times, I think that this entire zone of MU2 gets confused with a large-scale project. So I think it's important to note that the subdivision, the preliminary subdivision that was applied for. Oh, thanks. The preliminary subdivision that was applied for recently that you were questioning includes all of this area here. There was actually 2. So this larger parcel here is the currently 294 unit Orchard Hill subdivision. And all of this is MU2. So I felt that it was really unclear when this was brought up at recent meetings, and the planning board said that this subdivision, this site plan was not part of the preliminary subdivision, and it is. And I think it's important for you to see visually, this is an enormous area that could potentially be affected. And I wanted to make sure that we saw that visually, that this is all one big area. Thank you.
But again, this is all grandfathered, am I correct?
If, Attorney Parada, I'm going to let him answer this.
So there's a series of things that have to happen in order for that to be grandfathered. The preliminary plans have been filed.
Right.
If what's called, and approved, if what's called a definitive plan, which is a more robust plan with more information, is filed with the town clerk and the planning board within 7 months of that, That will open a public hearing before the planning board on that definitive plan. If that definitive plan is passed, then that's when the grandfathering where the freeze protection comes in.
Okay.
Right, so they've got 7 months to come in with a more detailed plan to get passed at the planning board, and then that grandfathering, right, would,
Yes.
Okay, good.
There's always the caveat of if it's approved. Obviously, if the definitive plan is not approved, then there's no protection just from filing the plan.
But the only thing that it would cause it not to be approved would be that it doesn't conform to our existing zoning.
No, well, yes, it would have to comply with zoning to get a subdivision approval, but there's all sorts of subdivision rules and regulations as well that the planning would have to apply. As I say, I don't know, they haven't even presented a definitive plan yet, so I don't know the likelihood that would would or wouldn't happen.
Dave Rowlands, 49 Brayburn Circle. I'm talking in favor of petition 9-26. I wanted to be more patient, but I just can't. So let me get some of these points out. First of all, when we talk about freezing the zoning, you have the site plan, which represents 18 acres. It doesn't represent, this whole MU2 is 130 acres. So when you're grandfathering, they have site plan approval. So his zoning, he can build regardless of what this does on that 18-acre lot because he has a site plan approval. So that freezes that for him. The subdivision is not a done deal in terms of freezing anything yet because it's only a preliminary. There's two subdivisions, one's 27 acres and one's 55 acres. They have 7 months after a filing for a preliminary to do that, to file for the definitive, and our planning board, at their own discretion, have the ability to ask for a development impact statement, which passed. So a development impact statement has to be given by the developer as part of the site plan approval. As part of the subdivision approval when they do the definitive. That's a serious document. It's in the appendix of the Leominster's subdivision regulations. You have to show impact on wetlands, on traffic, on schools, on police, on fire, and a whole bunch of other things. And it allows for community input. So that's all part of this subdivision approval, which may or may not pass. And if it doesn't pass, then the rest of the land outside of that 18 acres is not grandfathered because there is no subdivision. If it does pass, then it is grandfathered. And then we get into effective dates of, because we all know the game that was played here. This group filed a petition and the developer said, hey, I want to suppress these zoning changes, so he then came through with a subdivision. He applied after this petition 926 was in front of you as a mechanism to freeze the zoning. So when the effective date comes into play between both of these, that's another whole discussion. So I think it's a mistake to have the excuse or to assume that things are grandfathered outside of the 18 acres. A couple of things that I have is a note here was, first of all, in MU2, I heard that it was set up for intensive development. Now, according to the council president, which I'll address, I'm the author of MU2. If you believe that, then, we got land in Florida, because I'm not. If I am, then you're the co-author, because you worked just as hard as I did on this thing and attended those meetings. Having said that, I was involved deeply. We know that MU2 was set up with residential from day one. There's a long history, as I've talked about, with mixed use and what happened before MU2 that was again manipulated by developers to make mixed use to be 100% commercial. But anyways, the term intensive development, MU2 was set up for intensive development. I've been involved in this MU2 mixed use from 2004 all the way through to the rezoning. I've never heard that term used, intensive development. I don't know where that came from. I don't know who made that up, but I can promise you that was never part of the discussion there. The other thing I want to say is that the idea that this was well-vetted process, it was not. This came out of the Housing Committee meeting, and there was 3 meetings where MU2 was discussed. There was August of 2024, September of 2024, and November of 2024, according to the minutes. Now, if the minutes aren't accurate, then that's another problem, but I believe they're somewhat accurate. In the August of 2024, Liscotti presents his document saying, I would like these changes. You can see that in the document repository for the Housing Committee. It's his list of what he wants changes for MU2. There's no record of it in the minutes. I don't know how he handed it to. That's one of the questions I had that I would like to see answered from Mrs. Wood. I don't know how he did it, but the document is called MU2 Suggested Changes from G. Liscotti on the 29th of August. So he put his wish list in and introduced in August of 2024 that they ought to look at MU2 for housing. That's the first mention in the Housing Committee, an introduction in August. September is the in-depth discussion, and believe me, it's not much depth, according to the minutes. What happened was Liscotti's wish list got transposed onto Mr. Boyle's letterhead from the MRPC. And Liscotti's name is no longer associated with the changes, which I think is deceiving. Because what happens is when it comes down to here and put into petition form, it's sold as, here are the changes that our consulting expert on zoning came up with. And they're verbatim, the changes that Liscotti gave them. So there's not this big, well-vetted process of the developer said, here, this is what I need to build. He put them on his letterhead. They were reviewed in one meeting, and then that was it. November, there's only 2 comments. One is, Mr. Boyle says, this is the entire comments in the 3rd meeting of the Housing Committee, this well-vetted process. Mr. Boyle says there's going to be a potential for a lot of units up there, and the chairman of the planning board says, I think it's real, the developer's already working on the plans. That's in November of 2024. January 13th, you have a meeting up here. Those guys were working on the plans in November of 2024. January 2025, there's nobody here to be found to explain these things. And I don't care what anybody says. If you watched that January 13th meeting, there's no way there was enough information to openly rip open MU2 and its design purpose. Got dramatically changed. Dramatically. I mean, you remove the 1/3 restriction for housing. So now the remaining 82 acres can be built out fully residential. And there's no way industrial is going in there now because it can't compete with the pricing of residential. So the 40-something acres that were saved aside for residential development, for industrial development, forget it. It's just common sense. And this has been a game that's played not only this time around, but it was played under mixed use. A couple other talking points that I want to go to. My first meeting here on this planning board meeting, when this subject came out, I had a conversation with the landowner in the parking lot, saying the same thing. Roland, you wrote MU2, and by the way, I'm only in this project, it's only 16 units per acre. We're using what was allowed under the old zoning by special permit. Then my phone gets called and said, Dave, are you watching the debate? And I said, no. What are you talking about? You might want to watch the debate. Your name's being dropped at the debate, the Ward 5 Council debate. I haven't been around for 11 years.
4.
4, sorry, Ward 4. I haven't been around for 11 years. I was telling my wife, they're dropping my name at the debate. She's like, well, are you kidding me? So I turn it on, exact same talking point. Rollins is the author of this. It's got housing was always part of it, and it's only got 16 acres. Then I get another text, the same thing happens with the mayor's presentation and his Facebook thing. Exact same talking point, right? I'll tell you why that talking point is, I believe, deceiving. Number one, I didn't write it. But I don't care. If you want to say I
Why
wrote
don't
it,
you add the context that in the debate, my opponent suggested I wrote it? Did
So-
you know that?
no, but the answer
Is
is
that true?
that you wrote it?
Yeah,
No.
okay.
But then you said I wrote it?
You had a larger role in writing it than I did, that's for sure.
I would agree with that, because I was a city councilor, ward councilor.
Right, and I
But
was-
VHB wrote it, the mayor hired VHB, and the mayor hired you.
Yeah, but my role was simply to pass on language.
Right, you didn't,
As it was proposed and to be incorporated into an ordinance.
I agree, you didn't write it, I didn't write it, we reviewed it, we went through this in a well-vetted process. By the way, just so we're on the right page here, when we ran this process, ran for a long time, and we were short on money and everything, I called the mayor, and I said to him, we don't need, at that time, Mr. Bonanza, because we have to go through Coltman and Page. But I said, he adds tremendous value to the process, and if we can afford it, we should keep him here. Because you did add tremendous value to that process. So I'm not cutting you up about that, but I just want the record to be straight, because the same talking point comes from the developer, comes from you, comes from the mayor. People believe it, and it's not true. But for the sake of this discussion, if you want to say I own it, I'm more than happy, because I definitely worked hard to fix the mixed-use mess and try to get MU2. And if you go back to what I so-called authored, we'd have 12.4 units per acre up there. We would be limited to 1/3, which is 40 acres, and we would have 100-foot buffers for the neighborhood, and there'd be a lot less people at this meeting. So what I was involved in, I'd be happy to own, even though I didn't write it.
Well, if you didn't write it, you did sponsor it, right? I mean, you did sponsor those particulars, right?
I led the review, the legal affairs chair. I was the most outspoken person about the misuse of mixed use. I supported the petition in MU2 that was done, and I still support it to this day, and I haven't found one body in anywhere that said no residential should be allowed. Not one. The problem is the size and the scale, and this is the problem with this talking point. The problem is, I'm against the changes in 1525. I'm not against MU2, I'm against the changes to MU2. They were done for two reasons. The process was broken for how it came about. You don't let developers hand this nice little document and then take their name off of it. If a developer comes down here and says, hey, I want to change the zoning for my development, you're going to have a very different perspective, because that person's number one gain is profit, maximum profit. But when a hired consultant working on behalf of the planning department comes down and says, hey, I've investigated this, and I've done a review of this, and these are the changes that I feel are important, that's a very different presentation to this body. And I think that's one of the problems that I have with the process on January 13th. So I think the process was broken, and I think the content was broken. Everybody says, don't worry, he's not going to build 1,000 units. But he can, by right. And there's no, in the math, nobody, prior to this group getting involved, nobody was talking about 12.4 and 17.4 and 21.8. Nobody was talking about that. I watched that meeting multiple times down here. Is it 20 acres? I don't know. Is it not 20 acres? I'm not sure. Was this place built out before MU2 or not built out before MU2? There were so many questions. How many units were going to be the Ward 1 Council? How many units does it say? No answer. We haven't done a development study. It's just density. It's math. It's simple math. 21.8 units per acre, period. Now you subtract for wetlands, you subtract for these reduced buffers, and it's very simple. He's getting 294 units on 18 acres. That's in a subdivision. That is 55 acres. He's got 37 more acres. And by the way, why it's deceiving, the talking point where you talk about, look, he's only got 16 units per acre in the current project. Yeah, because he put a pool and a clubhouse in. He didn't put all units in. He doesn't need to put a pool and a clubhouse in the next sections. So he's got 37 acres of maximum build-out. And this idea that we sell into the public that this guy's fought really hard to make these zoning changes and really hard to preserve them, but he's probably not going to use them, you should not leave on the books 1,000 acres of ability by right to build this apartment complex in the backyard of this neighborhood and in Ward 1, the most congested. It can't handle the traffic, and it's allowed, and it shouldn't be allowed. You should also understand that you're setting a terrible precedent, because this is going to become the standard which everybody's going to want. And other people, experts, will tell you the other thing. With this crazy density that he has up there, what we're seeing from environmental reports and stormwater reports is the density so high that they're completely failed in handling the stormwater. The report is the most damaging report that I've ever read, and one of the key components of that is the density that's allowed up there doesn't give them the room to handle the stormwater. We're all sensitive to floods now, I think, after what happened. This doesn't even meet the most fundamental basic stormwater management for the city. And at the heart of that is too much density and greed. That's what at the heart is. He had, by right, based on zoning that I voted for, that passed this council when I was on there unanimously, that I led the review on, he had by right to build a substantial residential development project at MU2 that would have gone a long way in meeting these housing needs. The rest, the change in 1525, is manipulation and greed from the most powerful developer in this city in terms of playing with zoning. And there's no land that's been more manipulated in zoning than up there. And I know that because I know what happened in 2003. I became a counselor in 2004, and I saw what happened to the abuse of mixed use. That's why you have no industrial up there. It was abused in the beginning, and it's abused again this time after we tried to correct it. And that's why I'm so upset at it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public who would like to speak in relation to petition 9-26?
Good evening, Liz Macarella, 75 Harvard Street. Mr. Ellens will be a hard act to follow, but I will try to add some additional context. And obviously I'm in favor of petition 9-26. You've all heard from me several times on this. Something I wanted to start with tonight was we read Ms. Wood's letters, the one in October. She noted, she demonstrated that she wanted to clarify that the changes to the MU2 zoning were purposeful. She outlined each of the changes and told us in that letter why they were purposeful. What we are saying as residents is not that that wasn't done on purpose. What we're saying is that is not right. That is not okay, the changes that were made. These were changes that were made to favor developers. They were not made to favor residents. The development project that we have on the table right now favors a developer. It does not favor the residents of the city. And you're going to continue seeing that as long as this changed MU2 zoning is in effect. It is not right to eliminate the transparency by eliminating the requirement of notice to abutters for something that is enormously impactful to their own property that they've invested a lot in this city. It is not right to reduce the buffers to those abutting properties to what was previously the required minimum, now the maximum. It's not right to remove the additional oversight and the tools that the special permit process allowed. And for our planning director to state in her letter that that was purposeful is stunning. And I say that as a design professional. We want our boards to have tools and discretion so that they can study the impact of these big development projects on the city. We do not want to take away those tools or take away that oversight in the name of allowing more housing, because you're not doing that to benefit the residents. You're doing that to benefit the developers. It fast tracks projects that should not be fast tracked. We all know housing is a priority. We all share that priority. As residents, we share that priority. And I don't want to hear again from the proponent side that residents are against building out multi-unit residential facilities. We are not against it. But when you fast-track development and you take away oversight tools, you take away the transparency that allows residents to be notified timely and provide input and be a part of that process, you are favoring developers. And the developers are not putting in these projects because they're doing it for the good of the city. They are not coming here with altruistic hearts, building the most thoughtful, strategically forward-thinking projects to benefit our city. They are coming here with plans to make money, and we have to remember that. Because there's such a priority on housing now, developers are very clear that there is money to be made, and they are now looking at project sites that before they would not have looked at because they were too challenging. When we as a city remove our tools of oversight and allow this development to have increased density, that is increased dollar signs, that is increased incentive for the developers to come in. This zoning, this MU2 zoning, was changed at the hands of landowners and developers, and it was done without any residential input. No residents were part of that process. No residents were invited to be part of that process. No design professionals were invited to be part of that process. The one consultant that you had in MRPC took a handwritten wish list from a developer and turned it into their own work. And I am appalled. I am appalled as a citizen, as a resident of this city, as an architect. This is not how things should work. This is not forward thinking. This is not putting the residents first. And this is not good design and planning. We can do better. And we can do better by reverting this zoning to where it was, because it was thoughtfully implemented. It was balanced between commercial and industrial and residential. And they had to go hand in hand, as they should, because they impact each other. You cannot just build out residential to a maximum density and expect that commercial and industrial will somehow take care of themselves, and we will somehow have jobs for these people who are going to live there in what is market rate housing, not affordable housing. The looser development standards, the lack of buffers, the increased density, the lack of special permit, the lack of notice to abutters, all of that brings developers in to push, to build the most maximum projects that they can on sites that can't really handle it. And that's where the stormwater analysis that was done by Metro West Engineering comes in. It shows with hard data, math, science, he's got tables of data and 40 years of experience doing this work, usually on the side of a developer, not for abutters. What he's showing is that the existing site topography and soil conditions make it especially challenging for development. And then you add in the wetlands and you have a recipe for disaster with density. You have to build very carefully on a site like this. And his report outlines all the ways that that proposed development is deficient and does not meet standards, both state standards for stormwater, as well as the city's own stormwater ordinances. He demonstrably shows through data and tables that the stormwater volume will increase on the site as a result of this development. No analysis was asked to be done. No analysis was completed to assess the impact of that increased stormwater volume on abutters. And I know no one wants to talk about the flood 2 years ago, but we are irresponsible to not talk about the flood 2 years ago. And we as citizens need to think about this. We went through quite a lot as a city to get a disaster declaration and federal funding to help repair the city. We then went and implemented zoning changes that make it easier to build more dense projects on problematic sites.
and we had our own planning board approve the site plan for the proposed project at 86 Orchard Hill Drive when it actually did not meet state and local requirements for stormwater. When the next flood happens, when the next big storm happens, and that site is less equipped to manage the stormwater, and we have another disaster, and we try as a city to go to the government to get a disaster declaration and more funding, and we have to show them that we actually changed our zoning to make it worse to manage stormwater, and we allowed new development that had reports with data showing it would become worse. Where does that leave us as a city? Where does that leave us as citizens with recourse to go forward? Because what we're demonstrating is that we are not thinking forward. We are reacting to developers' greed and what they want, and we are shoving it down the throats of residents, even at the expense of good design and planning and science. And I find it appalling, and I want you to please vote in favor of petition 9-26. It is the responsible thing to do for our city and its residents for our future. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on or about petition 9-26? Please come to the podium.
Chelsea Madison, 65 Harvard Street. I just want to make one point. So Elizabeth Wood had stated in her letter that there's obviously a housing crisis. We're all aware of this. The people that are most affected are seniors and my generation and the generations to come. Market housing isn't going to help the housing crisis if we use market housing or market prices, right? If we're charging $2,500, $3,000 a month, my generation can't afford that. We're still living with our parents, we're in our parents' houses. We're trying to just make enough money to scrape by. So with luxury apartments, legally, they don't have to have low-income rentals. They don't have to have rent-controlled apartments. They can just jack up the price as they want. So how do you expect that to fix the housing crisis if the children who are going to be growing up here can't even afford to live in the apartments that are available right now? And that's all I want to say to that.
Good evening, Council President, members of the Council. Chris Rainier from Goulston and Stores from One Post Office Square in Boston on behalf of Greg Lascotti and Lascotti Development Corporation. I've attended prior meetings and have provided written and spoken testimony against the proposed amendment to the MU2 district, and we maintain our objections. I'm not sure what more I can say except to reiterate the prior amendments were adopted after a planning process and unanimous planning board recommendation. That's not the case with the current amendments. The prior amendments have led to the exact type of project, a single-use multifamily project, that the zoning amendments were designed to achieve. This was after nothing being built on the land since the shopping center was built approximately 20 years ago. Questions have been raised about my client's participation in housing committee meetings. I've spoken with Mr. Lascotti about concerning this and relay his comments. Yes, he went to a housing committee meeting because MRPC was hired and was looking at the city's zoning and how to increase housing production. There were other items on the housing committee agenda when he appeared. He gave his input at these meetings. He felt it better to provide input and get input from the committee and its consultant, rather than propose a separate amendment, given the focused planning efforts. The housing committee then made various recommendations to the planning board, including proposed changes to the Residence B and Residence C. This is summarized in Director Wood's memo of October 2025 that was read in tonight. These reforms suggested to the Residence B and Residence C districts were not advanced. There's little support to change the zoning in the city's residential districts that would meaningfully increase housing. Instead, the planning board did initiate the zoning petition for the MU2 district to increase housing production, and it was eventually adopted. Reversing the recently adopted zoning so quickly and without a planning process would chill economic investment in the city and restrict urgently needed housing. We urge the committee to vote no. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Spencer Holland, counsel for Wood Partners. At the last two hearings, I highlighted the dangers of reversing course on the zoning changes adopted less than a year ago. The message of deterrence it would send to would-be investors, the impact on my client who has invested significant time and resources in reliance on those very provisions. Now, on that latter point briefly, because there have been questions and responses about pre-existing non-conforming status. So there are two reasons that these changes still do impact my client. First, as I mentioned in my prior remarks, Section 40A was recently amended. And to have this significant of an investment in a project to hang its protected status on legislation that still is settling is obviously a concern for any developer. And then secondly, as has been noted, there is a different and more cumbersome process when it comes to making any kind of changes to the project moving forward under a non-conforming status rather than under the current zoning and the zoning that, again, my client relied on when it moved forward with this project. In my prior remarks, I also spoke to the merits of the changes themselves, which ended the drought of investment in an area specifically identified as a prime candidate for development. These changes were forward-thinking. They helped address what is widely considered the most pressing public policy challenge of the day in Massachusetts, the severe shortage of housing supply. This proposed amendment is not forward-thinking. Now, we've heard tonight from several speakers that residents here support meaningful housing development. And in my last remarks, I asked the question, if housing has ostensibly been allowed since 2012 under the current zoning scheme, how come there has been no housing development? We have not received any meaningful answers to this question. And what's striking is that even the amendment's proponents have not defended many of the core features of the prior zoning to which this proposal would return. As just one example, throughout multiple hearings before first the planning board and then this council, I have not heard anyone justify a prohibition on first floor residential use. And yet that's what this amendment reinstates. There seems to be little concern for the deficiencies of the prior zoning, only a rush to stop future development. Now, our firm represents dozens of municipalities, and I can tell you I have never seen nor heard of a city or town adopting an amendment to its bylaws or ordinance as an intentional and demonstrably ineffective placeholder until someone later comes up with a long-term policy solution. That is not sound planning. Now recently, and in the capacity of serving as town council, I heard a representative from CHAPA, that's the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, discuss the Commonwealth's housing crisis, what has led to it, how to address it, and in this case where the MBTA Communities Act fits in. Now, whatever one might think about that law, and I promise you I'm not going down that rabbit hole here, it is very telling that when the state took action to unlock housing development, the crucial lever it chose to pull was to require zoning districts where multifamily housing is allowed as a matter of right. The reason is simple and borne out by decades of experience. Neighborhood opposition coupled with restrictive zoning stifles housing development. At the last council hearing, when I noted that during the site plan approval process, many residents had opposed not just elements of my client's project, but the prospect of meaningful multifamily development at this site more broadly, that observation was met with some incredulity. And I think it was, again, tonight, we heard residents suggest that folks do not oppose meaningful multifamily development here. And so after the last hearing, I rolled back the tape and I watched some of those prior planning board hearings and found that if anything, I had understated the opposition to multifamily housing at this site. And so as I thought about tonight's hearing, I initially considered sharing a montage of quotes from just one of those hearings, all objecting to multifamily housing completely, to illustrate the headwind that housing development faces. There were dozens and dozens to choose from. But I thought better of it because this isn't about judging the preferences or opinions of any one group of residents. This is about a structural problem in our housing supply and about the structural solutions required to address it. By adopting the current MU2 zoning last winter, this council took an important step in the right direction. Tonight, I urge the council not to go backwards.
So if this is all about, Dave Rowlands, 49 Brayburn Circle, I just want to address those points because there's so many that I think are mistaken. If this is all about not going back to multifamily, then why are we talking about going back to what was happening before 1525 that allowed multifamily by right? The existing zoning that was in place before 1525 allowed multifamily development by right. This is only about greed, about size and scale being maximum build out. So the idea that nobody wants multifamily, the petition that 100 and some people signed is for supporting multifamily under the old guidelines.
Isn't the most significant thing that 1525 did was to remove the requirement of the commercial development as a prerequisite to the housing?
No, I would say there would be the one-third removal of the one-third non-residential development.
Right.
No, there's two. There's one that says you had to have 60% of the non-residential development done. That was discussed down here, and everybody sort of agreed that the stores fulfill that. Well, they don't. So you had to have 60% done. That's one. Are you talking about that one, or are you talking about the removal of the one-third?
Both, really. I mean, isn't that the most dramatic thing that 1525 did?
No, I would say three things.
I mean, Dave, the place has sat idle for all those years.
Oh, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Of course it sat idle. Why? Because he was off doing other things, number one. Number two, he was waiting for housing prices to go crazy. Number three, he was waiting for somebody to build a road. Yep. Right? We had an industrial development. We're going to build this road. Cost them $0, right? So he got a road for $2 million. Remember, that was a real customer that was going to come in there with industrial development. The 20-year wait of waiting for industrial, after all the manipulating of the zoning that made industrial no more incentives to it, finally was done. He got a $2 million road. The deal fell through.
But for you to suggest that it was laying there by right all those years and that, we go back to it, it's still going to be by right, it's not quite accurate, is it?
Of course it's by right. It's 12.4 units by right.
But there are things you have to do before you get there.
Like what?
Satisfy those requirements with respect to the other types of development.
No. So if you want to reset the zoning and go back, there's a couple things that I would amend to this. Number one is the first floor being not non-residential. Get rid of that. If you want to get rid of the 60% because the demand for housing is that, so get rid of the 60%, do that. But don't change the buffers down to nothing. Maximum 50 feet. Don't remove the whole purpose of mixed use, which is to get rid of the 42 acres set aside for non-residential. Don't get rid of that. And don't forget, the math is clear. By right from 12.4 to 21.8 is a massive increase. Just look at the subdivision of 55 acres. 9 extra units by right times 55 acres adds 400.
Just accurately park in the middle of that. They could have got under the original law 17.44 by special permit.
By special permit, I agree with that. But I tell you what,
Board of Permitted Uses, right?
Yeah, but special permit would have been a very tough case in here with this crowd, the wetlands. We know our former friend that was a city councilor even said from the beginning of this when he pushed it through that place is full of water. That was a well-known issue up there. So I don't think the 60%, I think there's give on the 60%. I think there's give on the residential, can't go on the first floor. Get rid of those. But put the buffers back to minimum of 50. Put the special permit back for high density, have that discussion. Put the 1/3 back in. Then, you can end up with really, by the way, 12.5 units on a 55-acre subdivision. Now, he wouldn't be able to go to 55 because we're limited to 40 because that's the 1/3. 12.4 on 40 acres is about 480 units. You're talking about Brooks Pond by right with no special permit. So they keep selling this. Oh, no, they don't want multifamily. They're resetting the zoning back that would allow 480 units, minus wetlands. We know there's some issues, but we're still talking a major, substantial project. This is all greed. This is way too much in a ward that can't handle it. And I think the reason that he hasn't built this, number one, he wanted the road done. Number one. Number two, he wanted housing to be really go up in price and becoming a big demand out here. And he wanted to find somebody that would push his zoning through before he ever had to present the project. He found all three of those. He greased the zoning first. Nobody showed up down here on January 13th saying, I need these changes for this project. They just came down and talked about language and changing the zoning. And that process, and the other point I would make to this is, if you reset this, you're going to scare investors away. Well, the opposite is also true. If you pass this, then you set a standard for investors that's going to be copied. They're all going to try this. They want 2,000. They want to play with the zoning. They want to be able to write their zoning changes. You set a precedence that is bad. So I would say just the opposite. We would send the right message if you reverse this, and you will attract investors that want to come in and work with the community. And there's a compromise that can be had. A 400+ development on 40 acres would have been more than enough. Let's make that pass. We got ADUs, we got MBTAs, we got overlay districts for multifamily. Who knows what this city's going to look like in 5 and 10 years? Thank you.
Councilor Ardmore.
Can I ask a question? I'm just,
Certainly, yeah.
If we approve this petition tonight, as Mr. Rowlands had said, that puts back in the restriction that you have to have non-residential on the first floor, right?
Right.
So
We
that's,
could-
but
we could change that,
He
Frank.
suggested we change that, but
Right.
in order to change that, we have to get rid of this amendment and come back with another one.
Yeah, I mean, what we would do is pass the zoning to what it was. There are some things in there that may not make any sense anymore, like the residential on the first floor. And we could change those. We could, go into that and
We could
make
possibly
those.
change those. There's no
We-
guarantee.
Well, it's up to us. It's up to the city council, Frank.
Can you amend it?
It's up to the city council.
Ask him, can you amend that?
We could,
Okay.
Mr. Parada.
I think the question
Attorney Parada.
from the audience is, could we amend 926
Probably not.
to sort of go back part of the way?
Tonight?
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's going to like the answer. It's a little unclear how that works in a city council setting. At town meeting, when there's a zoning amendment that's been recommended by the planning board, an amendment is made on the floor to change that, it's up to the moderator to decide whether that's within the scope of what was before the planning board. It's a little unclear in the law and the statute how that works in a city. We would suggest that it might be up to the chair, or it might be put to a vote to say, not on the amendment itself, but a first vote to say, is this within the scope of what was before the planning board? Because the issue is you can't have an amendment that is outside of the scope of what was before the planning board process. It's a little unclear on how that works in a city, frankly.
Which, for my purposes, it would be, I think we're going on a slippery slope because that wasn't brought before the planning board. We had to get a recommendation from the planning board before we can act on
Right.
926.
Right. Frank, we could pass this, convene a legal affairs or a special zoning committee. The president could appoint a zoning committee specifically to look at this, and we could go at it, piece by piece. We could look at that, the residential, requirement on the first floor, and we could change that. We could invite Mr. Lascotti down and tell us, look, we're trying to work with you here. We think we can come up with something reasonable by talking with you, but we need to bring in the residents from the neighborhood, and we want those buffer zones back, and we do want a special permit. The density, he knows what the density is. We could talk to him about that. We could say, look, you know what, the prior density is this. With a special permit, you can have X many, how many more. It's a conversation that nobody here on the city council ever had. I've seen developers down here not that long ago talking about changes that they wanted to make. And we made one not that long ago. And we had the developer sitting right there explaining why he wanted to change the zoning. I think it was an MU1 into something to make it easier for him or more appealing for him, to put apartments in old buildings. He sat right there and he told us what he wanted to do. And we supported that. We have not had that conversation, Frank. So if we, going back to the prior zoning, as Mr. Rollins, I think, really explained in a lot of detail, that's a lot of housing by right under the old zone, under the MU2 zoning that was, pre-January 13th of 25. That's a lot of residential zoning. I mean, apartments and everything. I mean, the density is there. The changes, from what I understand, from my perspective, from what I've read and heard, they're really harmful. And again, Ms. Macarella from Harvard Street, who is a registered, and she practices in Massachusetts, professional architect, referred to the stormwater management report. I would urge everybody to read that report because, again, it speaks to the density and the problems with that site.
Doesn't that have to be approved by the planning board before you can do that?
No.
Yes.
No, that's a conservation
does.
commission. What?
In other words, if he decides to build out this, extra areas.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's got to be reviewed by the planning board to become a definitive plan, and the environmental issues will be addressed, the wetlands will be addressed, the density will be addressed, the roads, the planning, how much the roads, take away from the 1,000 units. That's all going to be discussed, as well as the stormwater.
Well, the planning board just passed it was 308, now I think it's 294 units on 17 acres, right? The site plan approval, he went through the site plan approval process, and I love it when the attorneys start talking about site plan approval, because site plan approval is contingent on what the underlying zoning is. So if the underlying zoning says you have no buffers, you don't need any buffer zones, okay. The planning board then has to approve that because that's what the zoning says. So the zoning, the underlying zoning is the most important piece.
But you brought up stormwater management.
I did bring up
And
stormwater
that was passed subject to the Conservation Commission's approval. I think they always are.
Oh, yeah.
So the stormwater
The
management jurisdiction is with the commission.
It is. My point about that is that in that report, it talked about small reductions in density would have potentially positive results for the neighborhood. This, I mean, and this is, on for tomorrow night at the Conservation Commission, and I would encourage people to, read the report and just listen to what they have to say. But my point is because it comes back to density, Frank. And Ms. Macarella also talked about the topography of that area and the challenges of building at that site. So we can take a pause, take a beat after all of the information that has become available, and we can say, you know what? The prior MU2 zoning, now that we know, what the implication is of the changes that were made, we can get back to that prior zoning. And then we can say, we can have a conversation with the developer and say, okay, what can we work with here? Yeah, we'll get rid of the residential on the first floor thing. I mean, that makes I don't know where that came from. I was on the city council back with Mr. Rollins, but I did not, I think I went to a few of those zoning meetings, but I certainly wasn't, up to my eyeballs in it like they were. So there's an opportunity here, Frank. There's an opportunity to do it, to make it better.
There's a footnote.
Just because I'm a process person, can I ask the attorney, should we be having this discussion during the public hearing? Or should this be the debate once we get to the petition?
We had a counselor ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the extent discussion is engendered by question, it's probably okay. I mean, it is the open comment period, but there's probably some discussions allowed.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, I just think we're putting the cart before the horse. I think we should probably vote again. I know.
Well, there's a footnote too, which is the grandfathering. So are we gonna, if we pass this, do we stand in a better position to discuss this with the developer than not passing it?
Absolutely.
You think so? Okay.
I sure do.
All right, I got a different view of that. Go ahead, proceed.
Okay, okay. We do have someone at the microphone.
Donna Millette, 58 Sky Lane. A few things. I wanted to remind, again, the attorney for Wood Partners had mentioned that nothing was developed in that parcel, and when he said that last time, I commented, but perhaps it wasn't heard clearly. The difference was that that is, in fact, primarily wetlands. That the parcel that is outlined here, parcel E, where the large-scale, high-density housing development is, was delineated by Matthew Morrow. In 2019, he went out there and took his measurements, and then it was approved after COVID with the same data 3 years later, and that changed everything so that now you could build high density on that parcel. Please don't forget that. It is still wetlands. We have certified 2 vernal pools there through the efforts of citizens. Mr. Morrow no longer works for the city of Leominster, but he was able to ignore those 2 vernal pools, which were certified, when he delineated the land and magically made it so that you could build on it, number one. Number two, through Mayor's office, we did request to meet with Wood Partners. They declined. We asked Wood's Partners if we could have a meeting to talk about this. Please stop saying that we don't want housing. What we don't want is to be locked out. So perhaps, if this was voted, and I am standing here asking you to vote on this in the affirmative, we may be able to have those conversations. It isn't necessarily just specifically about Mr. Lascotti, the landowner, who is clearly selling this with permits so that he can get it developed by Wood's Partners, a large firm. We would be more than willing to be participating in those conversations. And lastly, to the point of the stormwater report, a peer review could have been ordered at the planning board and was actually requested by Ms. Woods, and was told, no, we do not need to have a peer review. And she, if you go back to that, the minutes of that meeting and also the tape from that meeting, you will see that she questioned again. It is within our purview to order a peer review, and it was declined by the chairman of the planning board. So in this case, the citizens went out and paid $11,000 to have our own peer review of the stormwater management plan. And I'm sorry if you have not seen that yet. It is incredible reading. It is incredibly offensive to our city how many rules were bent and broken. And we did receive on Friday the developers and their environmental engineers retort to that. And every single item, they simply said, it's unfortunate that we are not in compliance. If you want us to do better, we will. So please know, this is an environmental hazard that is not your greatest concern, but as Ms. Maccarella pointed out, this will be a flood. This will be an absolutely horrific, high-density, unnecessary regret. Sometimes people stand behind a bad decision because they just don't want to admit that it was a bad decision. This just might be one of those times, and we have an opportunity to undo this, step back, go back to what it was, and then fix it. Thank you.
Melissa Bible, 178 5th Street, Leominster. Wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but based on a couple comments. Again, it's been very obvious since 2022, probably back to 2019, Matt Moreau, on behalf of the petitioner, was on that property to review the streams and vernal pools that were on that property. So it was well known, at least 2022. The questions asked, why wait? Well, if an investor wants to develop market rate luxury units, and you're the chairperson of the Leominster Housing Authority, whose role it is to advocate for affordable housing, sort of a conflict. This isn't a perfect petition, but it is a temporary hold and would give time for the community to create a plan for what it really wants and what it really needs in the community. First floor commercial, not ideal, but it gives the community space to think about what it really wants. That being said, I think the city council really needs to create their own committee on housing. And what does that look like in this community? Are we going to give incentives to owner-occupied units? Are we going in forms of tax credits? You know, are we going to look at, this community has over 400 people in voucher subsidized housing that can't afford their current units or can't find units because tax rates are going up so significantly that property owners who are buying units with high interest rates right now have to pass that rental cost on to their renters. Give an incentive for people who are renting to community members in forms of tax credits. The city could do that. There's all kinds of options. Maybe that isn't the best one, but there needs to be a discussion. And that's why I asked the city council form their own committee to look at housing costs and incentivizations and have members of the community on that. Have the housing authority involved in that. Have architects and designers and developers involved in that. But have multiple pieces of the pie and not just one. Thank you.
Good evening, Bill Brady, 214 Harvard Street. I've heard a couple questions. This is going to be grandfathered. Why change it? What's it going to do? Well, what it's going to do, one, is prove that citizens do have a voice. But more importantly, if we don't pass this, if it doesn't get reversed, well, let's go to the positive. If it gets reversed, Mr. Lascotti has 8 months to do the definitive plan, right? And then it starts the time clock. If not, if you don't pass this, he can just let it expire in 7 months, and he can, as residents, we won't know what he wants to do until it's done. Give us some protections, please.
Liz Macarella, 75 Harvard Street. Two things. One, to the lawyer's point, they keep reiterating the chilling effect on developers if we were to revert this zoning. I again just want to call attention to the timeline. Mr. Rollins was talking earlier about how from the minutes of the Housing Committee meetings, there was a comment in November of 2024 by the chair saying that he thought that the project was real, that it was in development at that time. It was, as we all know, January 13 of this year that the zoning change went through the city council and became what we have now. In March, a mere 2 months later, the site plan was submitted to the planning board for the Orchard Hill Park development project. I can tell you they did not put that site plan together between January 13th and when it was issued in March. They were working on that prior. So they were working on this proposal before the zoning was changed. And it was the landowner who asked for those changes. That was not done transparently. As we've all been alluding to, there is a way for that. You can have developers come here and tell you what they want changed and why, and you can discuss a specific project. That was not done in this case. It was a backdoor deal. It was done without resident input. It was done without transparency. They were completing the project. The site plan project documents were being completed before the zoning was changed. And when it got changed, they pulled the trigger and submitted them. That is what happened. So as to a chilling effect to revert back, I would argue the chilling effect is the influence that landowners and developers have to change zoning in a non-transparent way and negatively affect the city's planning and the residents' quality of life. Changing it back is not sending a chilling effect to the developers except to say, you can't get away with that here. We are paying attention. It is not an easy thing to reverse the decision that you have already made. I think it takes a great deal of courage. I also think when it is the right thing to do, you really have a moral obligation to do it. And as to the question about, don't we already have tools at the planning board level? Couldn't they already review these things? I can tell you from attending these meetings, when we talked to the planning board, they started out by saying the Orchard Hill Park Development Project is permittable as it was submitted. What we could do is condition it. They didn't have tools to deny it because they didn't have the grounds to deny it because of the zoning. It all goes back to the zoning and what's allowed by zoning. And when the zoning allows by right certain aspects of a site plan, they cannot change that. They cannot deny it on the merits because it's conforming to the zoning. So we need the zoning to give us the tools to be discretionary, to dig for more information, to understand the impact, and when appropriate, to deny or condition a project so that it is more in line with what we want for our city. That is why we've started this petition for the zoning level, because without that foundation of what is allowed and what is not, and what is permittable by special permit, those are the rules that the planning board has to play by, and their hands get tied when we tie them through unnecessary restrictions. Thank you. One other thing, I have a copy of the stormwater review that we paid for as citizens. I'm just going to leave it here. Please read it if you have not. Please.
Hi, Haley Brady, 200 Harvard Street. I'd just like to point out the only two people here that are in support of this are the ones getting paid $500, $600, $700, $800 an hour. You know who's not getting paid to be here? Everybody else. They take time off work, 3 meetings a week, because they care. They care about this community. Yes, revert the zoning. I don't know exactly how the procedure works and what that looks like, but I promise you, if you reverted it back tonight and put out a petition, we need to get rid of commercial on the first floor, I'll sign it on my way out, and I'm sure everybody else here would too, because they don't care about those things. They care that a property they've lived at for 100 years isn't allowed to have this giant build, 15-foot setbacks between all these buildings and 0 buffers. The fact that the residents have to pay to prove what we can all see. We live in this area. We know that these slopes, these grades are crazy, but we have to pay to prove that to even get anywhere. These guys have money. They can planning, conservation, they're very competent bodies, but they are part-time bodies. I've spent an embarrassing amount of time researching all of this. You cannot expect that out of any of these boards to spend that much time. This is not their full-time job. You know whose full-time job it is? The engineers that are getting paid to just, I'm sure you know, Mr. Bedanza, what's the lawyer term for just burying the opponent in paperwork, hoping that they don't see the point because there's so much to read through?
You can't infer that that's happening. You can speculate all you want, okay? But you can't infer that. That's improper and unfair.
Okay,
Okay?
improper.
And if you think that's the way to proceed with this, in
I'm
terms
just-
of presenting a case, I would say you're a little bit misguided.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't work for the government. All I can do is from what I've seen, from the hundreds of thousands of pages that I've gone through this process, that's not fair to ask of the residents. It's not fair to ask of the boards. And I know this density, was allowed with special permit. You know what a special permit would have given us? The right to ask for a sidewalk on Harvard Street so that Chelsea doesn't have to worry about her child getting killed. It would give us more negotiating power. It would give this city something. Somebody comes to you and says, I want to throw this massive density unit in there. I'm going to make millions. Well, you know what? Give us $1 million towards Fallbrook so we don't have to instate a meals tax. It gives you negotiating power. It gives you teeth. It gives all the boards teeth. We don't care about housing. Remove all of those other things that are hurdles to housing. What we care is that, Mrs. Harper's house isn't going to get flooded out because somewhere she's lived forever they're just building there. And how does she find out? A no trespass order. Not because she got notified as an abutter, not because any of us did. Just give us back the basics and keep your teeth. Keep your negotiating power. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to weigh in on 9-26? Okay, I'll ask for a second time. Is there anybody in the audience?
Anita Milliard, 145 Sacramento Drive. I don't have much to add. I just want to say that for the record, I am in support of what the residents of Harvard Street, Sky Lane, the letter that Councilor Shalfo-Zephyr read from the resident from Sky Lane, just everything that they've been saying. I'm in support of that. I'm hoping that you will give this some careful thought. Thank you.
Okay, back to the public. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in on petition 9-26? For a second time, is there anybody who'd like to speak on 9-26? And for a third and final time, is there anybody who would like to speak on 9-26? Okay. Seeing none, anybody else on the council have any questions before we close the public hearing? No? Okay. My recommendation would be to close the public hearing. Oh, no, never mind.
I will check with the members of the committee when we get to it on the
Thank you. Yep.
agenda.
Yep.
All right, we're now going to conduct a public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on a matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address, along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. I'll just wait for the formal sign-up sheet. Usually somebody on one of the public hearings. Nope, in this particular case, no one has signed up for the public forum. However, I must ask if there is a member of the audience that wishes to address us on a agenda item, please come to the podium.
Real quick, for the sake of the people here, Dave Rollins, 49 Brayburn Circle, speaking on petition 926. Could I ask that you bring it to the front of the meeting, or as fast up on the agenda so we can vote on it, so we can go home?
Yes.
Thank you.
Granted. It's one thing we can agree on. All right. Anybody else in the public forum a second time? In a third and final time? I declare the public forum closed. We'll now go to, Dave, you know we have to handle petitions first. Petitions first time on the agenda. We'll get through those hopefully fairly quickly, and then we'll bring it to the front. All right, starting with 27-26.
Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England Incorporated requests permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Pleasant Street, National Grid to install one jointly owned pole on Pleasant Street beginning at a point approximately 10 feet east of the center line of the intersection of Lisa Drive and continuing approximately 10 feet in an easterly direction. National Grid is installing a push brace on pole 70 in order to remove an existing tree guy. Location approximately as shown on plan attached. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be granted a location and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it find necessarily said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewithin marked Pleasant Street, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 311-99528, October 23rd, 2025. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or in intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings of each of said petitioners may desire.
Petition 27-26 is referred to the Chairman of Public Service.
Regular course, Mr. President, with referrals to both the Leominster Police Department and DPW, and we need to set a public hearing I
Okay.
assume for the first meeting in January.
Yes, January 12th, let's do that at 6:40 PM. All right, so 27-26 has been given regular course, referrals to the Police Department, DPW, with a proposed hearing date of January 12th at 6:40 PM. All in favor of the
Just
hearing
for the
date?
record, Mr. President, this one and the next one I'll be abstaining from,
All right.
partially owned by my employer. Thank you.
So noted. All those in favor of setting the public hearing date, please recognize usual manner. Okay, that may be done. Moving on to 28-26.
Massachusetts Electric Company doing business as National Grid and Verizon New England Incorporated requested permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Jungle Road, National Grid to install 3 jointly owned poles on Jungle Road, beginning at a point approximately 1,650 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Old Mill Road and continuing approximately 400 feet in a southerly direction. Location approximately as shown on plan attached. Wherefore it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles be erected substantially in accordance with the plans filed here within Mark Jungle Road, Leominster, Massachusetts, number 312-08089, October 27th, 2025. Also for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes.
28-26 is referred to the Chairman of Public Service.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course, again, with referrals to the Leominster Police Department and DPW, and a public hearing, I assume, also on January 12th.
Right, so regular course, DPW, LPD referrals, and we're going to give it a public hearing on January 12th at 6:41 PM. All those in favor, noting Councilor Cormier's abstention for the hearing date, please recognize usual manner. That may be done by a vote of 8-0. I'm going to have the Finance Chair give the financial report, and we'll take up 926.
Thank you, Mr. President. We began the fiscal year on July 1st, 2025. The opioid stabilization fund had a balance of $577,545.87. We've received proceeds from the state in the amount of $159,226.25. To date, we've spent $249,371.46. leaving us with a balance of $487,400.66. The capital stabilization fund, we began with a balance of $4,593,191.62. To date, we've spent $2,261,190 and leaves us with a balance of $2,332,001.62. And the regular stabilization fund, we began with a balance of $24,173,510.41. We've earned interest in the amount of $174,186.94. We've spent $2,385,402, which leaves us with a balance of $21,962,295.35, and that is the financial report.
Any questions?
Any news on
Free cash?
I have not heard anything yet.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move to legal affairs, and 926 in specific. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I'm sorry, what are we doing? Oh, we're going right to this? Okay.
Yep.
Good. I am ready to report. Petition 9-26, Susan Shalafu Zephyr, Brandon Robbins, Councilors at Large, Ward 1 Councilor Robert M. Tossi, and 10 registered voters request to amend the zoning ordinance pertaining to MU2 zoning. We've heard, over several meetings, from the neighborhood. We've also heard a lot of technical information from a variety of sources. And, my recommendation, I'm going to read this to start. This is from the zoning ordinance, the zoning ordinance of the city of Leominster. I'm going to start with this, and it's section 22-3 called Purpose. Purpose of the zoning ordinance, and this is a city policy. This is from the zoning ordinance. The purpose of the zoning ordinance is to promote the health, safety, convenience, morals, and welfare of the present and future inhabitants of the city of Leominster, to lessen congestion in the streets, to conserve health, to secure safety from fire, flood, panic, and other dangers, to provide adequate light and air, to prevent the overcrowding of land, to avoid undue concentration of population, to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewage, schools, parks, open space, and other public requirements, to encourage housing for persons of all income levels, to conserve the value of land and buildings, including the conservation of natural resources and the prevention of blight and pollution of the environment, to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the city, to preserve and increase the city's amenities, and to encourage an orderly expansion of the tax base by utilization, development, and redevelopment of land. So I think that's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about zoning. I think it's particularly important to keep in mind when we're talking about this change back. I'll just make a few comments. There were a few things that I heard I just wanted to address. When petition 9-26 to change the zoning back to what it was previously went back to the planning board, 3 members of the planning board who had supported it originally voted against it. They supported 9-26. 3 people on the planning board. There was 1 member absent. I don't know how he would have voted, but it was a 3-3 tie. So that says a lot to me. 50% of the planning board thought, in retrospect, now that they knew all of the details, now that they knew the impact at that site and on that location, they thought, no, we're not crazy about this anymore. So they voted to support 9-26. I think that's really important for people to know. State House, in the planning director's letter, she talked about state housing goals, that all of this housing is going to meet state housing goals. What about the city of Leominster's housing goals? We're talking about ADUs. We're talking about the MBTA requirement that we have to build, in different parts of the city. And that was actually kind of a thoughtful knockdown, drag out, a little bit, conversation or two about the MBTA stuff, because the first proposal came in, nobody liked it. It was all going to be in Ward 1, I think on Nashua Street. Council President and, his former best friend and city councilor in Ward 5, took a lot of time and worked closely with the MRPC to come up with a more balanced approach for the city to develop and comply with the MBTA law. Now, all of that housing that we have to commit to, or else we would lose state grants, is spread throughout the city. There's some in Ward 1, there's some in Ward 3, there's some in Ward 5. I think that's important to keep in mind. We need to keep the city of Leominster's housing goals in mind. Yeah, we're going to work with the state. We need to work with the state. We're going to, nobody likes, state mandates, but guess what? When you got millions of dollars in state grants, being, held out as, an incentive, you have to go along with them. But we can do it our way, and we did on the MBTA housing. We took it back, thought long and hard about it, had a lot of discussions about it, and came back with a better plan for the city of Leominster. At this point, honestly, I think one of the attorneys had mentioned also that, changing the zoning back without a planning process to the MU2 prior, the prior MU2 zoning was on the table for about a year. I think that zoning committee, Mr. President, am I right? How long was that zoning committee meeting? It was a long time. Well, it was a long time. It was over a year. Rollins is here. It was a year. I mean, it was a long time. MU2 zoning.
Fall of 24?
No, it was before that.
2012?
I'm talking about 2012. I'm talking about the original whole zoning review.
Yeah.
That was a long time. That was an intense process, and that was the planning process that gave the city of Leominster the MU2 zoning that was on the books prior to January of this year. So that had a really long planning process. It was very well vetted. I know that developers were part of that conversation. Mr. Bonanza was as a layperson, not as a city councilor. The former Ward 1 councilor was part of that, as were other city councilors who are no longer on this board. So that had a long and a lengthy and a very thoughtful development process. So it's not changing something back that isn't, that's half-baked or half understood or half whatever. That had a lot of vetting, and it was done in a very thoughtful way. So at the end of the day, I've got a million more notes, but honestly, I think at the end of the day, I think it's just to do the right thing. I never forget that I work for the residents in the city of Leominster. I work for all of them. I work for the business people. I work for the developers. I work for the the restaurateurs, who are here, and I work for everybody in the city of Leominster. I'm a city councilor at large, and I think you just sometimes have to just do the right thing. And I think in this case, based on the information, after the fact, I voted against it initially, but I could have been convinced between January and now that, geez, that was a really good thing, and I missed the boat on that one, that I made a big mistake. But it's really just been the opposite. The more information that comes to light, the worse and the more harmful those changes really are. So I would urge and ask each counselor to really think long and hard about making this change back. And there are some tweaks we can absolutely make. And I'm happy to sit, and as most of us, I'm sure, we would sit down with the developer, the landowner, whoever, and we could talk through the prior zoning. But restoring the public's participation in the process, I think, is really critical. That's what zoning is about. It's where people live. Jack McLaughlin, who's, I don't know who knows Jack McLaughlin. A lot of us knew Jack McLaughlin. I worked with him. I was lucky enough to work with him. He was a longtime city councilor. He was a Ward 1 city councilor. He was the mayor of the city of Leominster, and he was the Register of Deeds in Fitchburg. When I was a new councilor, he gave me one piece of advice. He said, "So, don't ever hurt people where they live." And that has always just struck with me. That's people's backyards. That's where their kids grow up. That's where their kids play. That's where they walk. That's where they ride their bikes. So I am going to ask each and every one of you to please support petition 9-26. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the smart thing to do. And I think it's not only in the best interest of the neighborhood where this is located, I think it's a much smarter way for the whole city to develop that land. We can do that. So I would ask, my recommendation is to grant 9-26, and I would ask that you poll my committee.
Sure. Councilor Tossi?
I agree.
And Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I'm going to take a minute because obviously my ward abuts this ward the most closely, and we're going to be affected. My ward is going to be affected secondly to this. And I appreciate when all the citizens are involved. I appreciate when all the residents are involved. But I'm going to be honest. My problem with this petition as written and as presented, and this is after listening to everybody, only brings us back to what it was prior. It's going to not stop the project that's going on now. It's not going to address any of the wastewater, any of that that's going on right now. So that's off the table for what's going right now. My problem is this only gets us back to where it was before, and then what? I heard people talk about today, well, no, we would agree to that MU2 should get rid of, the 30% and the, no residential on the first floor. I hear all those things now, but if we pass this, we revert back. It doesn't change anything that's going on up there now, and then we have to start. We're back in the same place. We're backwards. So I'm not arguing. I'm just telling you honestly, this is the way I'm reading it and I'm seeing it, and I appreciate it, and I understand, and I agree with the wastewater, with the wetlands, with everything else, I don't agree with the procedure of just taking this, turning it back, and then we're done. We're done until somebody comes back and files another petition that spells it out. These are the changes that I want to make. These are the changes that we should consider. I think we're missing an opportunity, and I'm not suggesting we amend this on the fly, because I think that's worst case scenario. I think that led us to this position in the beginning, to begin with. I don't believe in amending it on the fly. I think that this petition should be amended and to address the changes that we want, not to just revert to back where it was, because if there wasn't anything wrong with the old one, we wouldn't have been here in this position now. It never would have gotten changed.
It got changed.
It's not, we're not debating right now. We're just, she's stating her
That's just,
basis.
that's the basis for my opinion at this point right now. Do I agree there needs to be changes? Yes. Do I agree there needs to be amendments? Yes. I don't think that this is the petition that gets us there. That's all I'm saying.
So we have a 2-to-1 majority to grant 9-26, and now I'll
Through the
open
chair,
it.
excuse me, through the chair to the Ward 2 counselor. So are you a no? I didn't hear that. Okay, I want to
Okay, so
clarify that.
No problem. I thought it was clear, but that's good. All right, so we have a 2-1 legal affairs majority for granting 9-26. Now we'll open it up to debate.
Well, through the chair to the Ward 2 counselor, this is the first step. There weren't problems with the prior MU2 zoning. There were protections in place that protected people who lived in that neighborhood. There were zoning specifics, there were density specifics, and then there was an additional level where the density could be increased by special permit. So that would have to be discussed and debated in front of a public, in a public meeting. There were 100-foot buffers, I think, and 50-foot buffers. There were buffer zones between where the buildings could be and where the residential neighborhoods, the property lines. There were other kinds of protections in there for the neighborhood. So it wasn't a problem until a developer, a landowner decided.
Allegedly.
No, it's not allegedly.
Can we go with allegedly?
Okay, allegedly.
Thank you.
I've seen the document that's been.
I saw a document as well with somebody's name on it.
Okay.
That's.
Okay, that was part of, I think, a request that I did for housing committee agendas and documents and all that kind of stuff. So I took it as, put there by the planning director, who was the keeper of all those records. But I'll use alleged. There weren't any problems with MU2 zoning, and as we have heard, MU2 zoning was part of a much bigger overhaul of the zoning ordinance, right? So the prior MU2 zoning had, I think, a pretty adequate or pretty reasonable density requirements. If you want to bump those up, to 17, then you'd have to go to a special permit, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. That would mean the abutters had to be, notified. The changes that were made, not in public, not down here having a conversation about, well, why do you want to get rid of the special permit? Or what's wrong with 17 point whatever, units per acre in terms of density with a special permit. So it's a step in the right direction, I think, is how I would characterize it. It may not be, the best fix in town, but it certainly is a step in the right direction. And we, the council, at the discretion of the president, he could appoint a special committee on housing, or not housing, on zoning. Oh, housing and zoning. I mean, because they go hand in hand. So I think that would be a really smart way to go. But I think this is a very important first step. I think this, for a number of reasons, is just a really bad precedent. And I think it does restore some of the protections that the prior MU2 zoning had in place. It's not perfect.
I agree with you. I agree that it needs to be addressed. I agree with a lot of the points that you brought up. That I agree with all that. this isn't the vehicle to get us there.
I
This is the
would argue
vehicle
that
to
it is.
just turn back
It's-
time
it's-
and then let it die there.
Oh, absolutely not. We wouldn't let it die there. I mean, the point would be to change this and then start working on it again. We could, right after the first of the year, when we reconvene in our new year, Pauline, I would never say drop this. I mean, this is all, every single zoning district in the city that allows residential and multifamily, we should take a look at. And we could look at MU2 first of all, because we know that there are some things that are problematic. Like the no residential on the first floor, silly things like that made sense, 20 years ago. But this is a really important first step to put those protections, like the special permit, like the abutters, drawing a blank on the buffer zones. Thank you. The buffer zones. I mean, that's really important. Do you know now they can build 15 feet from somebody's property? They were showing on. I mean, this is serious.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm disagreeing with is this as it's proposed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no proposal except let's go back to the way it was before.
Because it was better.
I'll put in a proposal tonight.
Because it was better.
But let's amend this. And I don't want to amend it on the fly. I don't want to do that.
I don't either.
This is something that needs to go and get looked at and be done properly, and not just hey, this didn't work out this time, let's just go back to the old way, and then we don't know what happens with it. Then it just sits there until something else comes out.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that this has raised a lot of issues and a lot of questions. It went back to the planning board. It went to the planning board. And it was a 3-3 tie whether or not to support it. But 3 people that voted, for the zoning change, now that they see the details, they've decided, no, this is crazy. They're not going to vote for it again. They voted to support the change back to it. So it's a really good first step. I would never let this sit and pretend, I'm never going to revisit it again, because I think it's too important. I really do. And I think it could be better. It's not, amending it on the fly, I don't think really makes any sense. Getting it back to the zoning that it was, that was thoughtfully prepared when the whole rezoning effort what happened, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, this was thought out, it was well vetted, it made a lot of sense. So.
10 years ago, 11, 12 years ago.
Well, okay. But it was better.
That's
it's
what
better
I'm just
that
saying.
it's-
There's new things that have come up,
that
right?
we can address. That we can address.
Needs to get addressed, but aren't addressed here.
But
They're
we can
not
do
addressed
that,
here.
Pauline. But that's right. No, they're not. It's like a baby step. It's a first step. Let's just get this corrected, and then we could take, other steps to get it, the best that we can. I mean, it's a first step, and then we could build on that.
Sure.
Okay. Listen, we're not going to take any comments from the audience at this point. You've had your opportunity. You've all conducted yourselves very well. You've made your points. We've listened. This is a council debate. It is not a debate with the audience. Please keep quiet. Okay, who had their hand up?
Right.
Council Oninger?
I agree with the Ward 2 counselor, and I think you're putting the horse before the cart before the horse. And if someone were to come back with a petition in January with the changes that we think we've talked about tonight, I would certainly support that petition, But as this stands tonight, I will vote against it.
Okay, Council Robbins.
Well, I respectfully disagree with both the Ward 2 counselor and the at-large counselor across from me. To use the analogy, I think the horse is already out of the barn and running down the street without a cart. And I will willingly accept that I was part of that, 8 that took the vote in support of this. I think that, we were lacking information at the time, and, further time was asked for, and we should have taken it. I also think that if by reverting this back, we're just putting our foot on the brake. It doesn't mean we're stopping the car completely, but slowing it down a little bit. And I think that we need to consider being able to slow down a little bit, work in a more relational way with both the public, developers, city councilors, the planning board, the conservation commission, so that they can all have a voice. I think that this allows us to do it. And, I worry that if we don't do this, we're locking ourselves in to just keeping it the way it is moving forward. So I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Councilor Robbins, Councilor Tossy?
I'd just like to say it's really the right thing to do. The people have spoken, and it's clear this is really the right thing to do here.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cormier?
Thank you very much. I did a little research, so I'm very well aware of density. On Central Street, in a very short radius, there's about 650 units that include apartments, condos, a trailer park. And on my end of town, there's probably about 2,300 units total when you start looking at Wildwood condominiums. I probably have the most density of anywhere in the city. And I'd ask anybody to challenge me on that. Ward 3 is very dense, and, to the point the at-large councilor in the petition, one of the authors of the petition had mentioned, the council president had mentioned to me his plan about the MBTA zoning. And at first, I thought he was out of his mind, and I told him he was.
It's not an uncommon thing for you to say.
No, it's not. And, he sold me on the plan, and we took some of the burden in Ward 3 from Ward 1 graciously in an area that is already very dense, okay? We put some of that MBTA zoning in the most densest area already in the city of Leominster. And I did so for many reasons. But, I guess I have to echo the two councilors to my left. I certainly don't think this petition is the way to go. I don't think we should set a precedent. I don't think anybody here would be happy if I put a petition in to revert the MBTA zoning all back up to Ward 1. We could start a war in the city over zoning, and that's not going to be healthy either. So I'm not going to be supporting this petition, and I think we can open up potentially more discussion in the future, and I do think that it would be better to work with obviously there's grandfathering that's went on, and I'm sure the developer is going to take full advantage of that. I've learned in life that you can get more with honey than you get with vinegar. So maybe at this point we should, try to work with him going forward and not, put a sledgehammer down. That's my view on this, and I'm not going to support this petition. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anybody else? Thank you. Councilor Frida?
I was also on the council back when we were doing the zoning, and it really wasn't as smooth as everybody thinks. We had VHB, that was rejected. We had another review that was Councilor Rollins looking at, yourself and Councilor Dombrowski from the past. That went at least a year, 3 or 4 nights a week for at least a year. And then that still wasn't satisfactory. So we had a situation where we had somebody else look at it, and I think that's when the council president reviewed it legally. But we ended up, because we did things then, in a lawsuit that cost us $75,000 because we had somebody looking at it that we had no authority to put him in looking at it. So it had to go to the state to be able to pay this gentleman for looking at that zoning. It was not an easy zoning situation. I don't disagree with the other councilors across from me. I absolutely agree this needs to be looked at. I think everybody had a great point. I think there's a lot of things that we can do with a lot of the information that's been provided. We have not had the information from one side sit with the information from the other side. We have not had a dialogue with all people involved. We haven't had a question to the developer, why did you do this? Or to Wood Development, or to the attorneys. And opposite, what would be most beneficial to you? We're all losing abilities to communicate everywhere. And I don't think this is the way to proceed to do this. Looking at it, absolutely. Should we be looking at it after? Maybe the recommendation from a housing committee or a zoning committee is not a bad thing. And I think there's a lot of things we can change by taking the information that everybody's given us, have people involved in this group be part of the discussion, and move from there. But, to take the chance on try to reverse it by the zoning, I think is the wrong way to approach it.
Okay, I'm going to yield the chair to the vice president so I can enter into debate. I start with the proposition, that I read in the newspaper a couple of months ago that Governor Healy challenged all of the communities in Massachusetts, especially the ones west of 128, to create housing at all price points. And housing crisis is real. And there's another factor in play here, and that other factor is growth in the community. We all know that our Prop 2.5 increase each year only increases our base by about $2 to $2.4 million. We rely on growth. And the kind of housing that's proposed here is probably going to be similar to Brooks Pond in the sense of the rents. And in terms of growth, it will yield positive tax dollars to the city, which affects all the taxpayers of the community. Zoning is never perfect. It's a balance between competing interests. And that's certainly evident by this particular proposal, as well as the original proposal that was passed back in January. It's always a moving target. I would have no issue with looking at this with fresh eyes in terms of addressing those things, particularly the first floor residential use. When Councilor Angelini and I looked at the original original MRPC proposal for MBTA compliance, it was proposed that all of that housing was going to be contained in a half-mile radius in Ward 1, every single bit of it. And I just said that, and we had a meeting, an informational meeting, not unlike this process. A lot of people showed up, and we worked with the MRPC to say that's just crazy. I mean, there's a traffic component, it's a congested ward, and we moved over half of that housing, as Councilor Cormier indicates, to Ward 3, as well as Ward 5. We had 90 people show up down here for that hearing. Only 3 spoke. One praised the plan, one asked for a definition of family, and one asked about the definition of prior non-conforming use. So I think that was a success, and we benefited as best we could the interest of Ward 1. I mean, like I said, there's no perfect proposal. And this, we were contemplating when we looked at the MBTA zoning about requiring something other than housing on the first floor of those units, which we probably could have got away with. But we were advised that that was such a chilling effect on housing that we might have run afoul of the approval of the Attorney General's office on our plan. So we abandoned it. That illustrates the point that that first floor non-residential use is a killer, at least in today's marketplace, to develop housing, which is one of the major points in passing that, I forget the number of the petition that created the changes to MU2 back in January. 1525, was that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the big footnote here is as the attorney indicated, we've now created a probably almost definitely a prior non-conforming use. So what benefit do we have by going backward? Not a lot, in my opinion. And maybe if we're looking for cooperation and communication between the parties in interest, maybe we chill that by passing 9-26, and that's a fear of mine. So that's what I have to say. Anybody else?
Oh, unless, do you want?
Council Noseworthy?
Thank you, Mr. President. So as I had mentioned before, I was obviously the only person not here for the prior vote. As I listened to all of the information, I agree certainly with bits and pieces of what everyone has said. There's definitely not a perfect path moving forward. But I guess I look at this as more towards what the at-large counselor mentioned about pumping the brakes a little bit. I think what's gotten lost in this a little bit, because it's not necessarily involved in the petition itself or the proposal itself, is what was already mentioned about the people in Leominster. Those graduating high school being able to rent, those going to college coming back and being able to afford. I myself have a 19 and a 21-year-old who have full-time jobs and reliable vehicles, and I guarantee you they probably would not be able to live here. But what sticks out to me the most, without repeating and reiterating everything, is the lack of transparency for the residents of the city. And I was very much impacted by the flooding on 9/11. And recently had some constituents come over, and at the end of the whole 2 hours of conversation, one of the things we all talked about is responsible building so that the people who live in the housing don't have any recourse and are spending all this money to address flooding concerns. And I'm also thinking about a phrase that I've heard in my life about not letting perfect be the enemy of the good. No matter what, I mean, the votes are what they are clearly, but housing is going to take us a really long time to figure out. Our country, our city, our state are going through things that have never happened before. So that's my other concern in not passing this, that if we don't pump the brakes, how many other situations like this are going to occur, because it's going to take us a really long time to come up with a comprehensive new petition moving forward and taking in information and forming a housing committee and speaking to all the stakeholders. Like I said, the votes are what they are, but those are the things that stick out to me, is the transparency to the residents and taxpayers, and flooding and other things like environmental concerns that are going to cause issues both for the people already living in Ward 1 as well as the new residents moving in. And I'll just finish with, I am not against housing either. I think there's a lot of work we need to do with the residents, with the developers, with all of the stakeholders. But I still am not seeing a path forward for the average person living in Leominster being able to afford it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Noseworthy. Anybody else? All right, so I guess yes.
Yep. I would like to change my recommendation,
Okay.
the committee's recommendation. I'd like to give this leave to withdraw without prejudice.
Well, that's not on the table right now. So
Well, I'd like to
we have to
change it.
vote what's on the table.
Okay.
That's my
There's a
rule as chair.
recommendation, we have to
We
vote
have a
on it.
recommendation.
We have to vote on that.
We have to vote on it.
You can make a superseding motion.
Have you made a motion?
Yeah.
I made a recommendation.
That's a
I didn't
motion.
make a motion.
It's the
I
same
made
as
a
a motion.
recommendation.
It's the same thing.
You want to withdraw your committee recommendation?
Correct.
I mean, I think you could make a motion to withdraw the petition without doing that.
Well, but there's a motion on the floor that's being debated. You can't change, you have to vote on the motion that's being debated.
Yeah, I mean,
You can't in the middle take a flyer on what
yeah,
you debated.
yeah. I guess it's not the recommendation it's the approval of the, I haven't heard a motion yet to approve or.
The recommendation is a motion.
Okay.
Under Masons. So.
It doesn't require a second.
It's a committee recommendation, which in effect is a motion. So you've got you get your 3 committee members.
Yeah, I think it's outside the scope of, it's a subcommittee, right? So I think it's outside the scope of the full body.
No, this recommendation was made to the body, debated by the full body. Now the body has to act on the recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is whether you want to, as the chair of that committee, say you no longer support this, I think you could do that. I think that's a question, separate question of whether you could withdraw the actual petition. I thought you were saying you wanted to change your recommendation to no. I assume you wouldn't do that, but to the extent you made a recommendation, I don't see why you couldn't change that, but I don't think you can withdraw the petition.
No, I'm not trying to right, my recommendation would be give it leave to withdraw.
I agree.
Well, it's not, Bob, it's not before you at this point, with all due respect. We have, you're correct, you misunderstood what you wanted.
I thought you wanted to change your recommendation. I don't know why you would do that at this, but I thought you wanted to change your recommendation as a committee from.
Which the committee would have been one in favor of the 926, 2 against. Right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, yeah. I think that's a different question from seeking leave to withdraw. That's the way I understand how the process should work.
Okay.
All right, so I just will reiterate as well, and I think you can confirm this, Attorney Parada, that there was a protest filed by the landowner. So the requirement is 3/4 vote, not 2/3 vote, which means 7 votes of the body.
Yes, and that was
required.
confirmed by the clerk the same way that happened for the racetrack when I was here last time.
All right, any additional debate? Seeing none, this will be by roll call. So the yea vote is to pass 926, and nay vote is to not to grant 926.
Nay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Nay.
Councilor Arndinger?
Nay.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yay.
Councilor Tossi?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Robbins?
Yay.
Councilor Frida?
Yay.
And I'll be recorded as nay. So by a vote of 5 to 4, 926 is not approved. All right, back to finance. Starting with C29.
You don't want me to stick around?
I don't think so.
See you later. Thank you, Justin.
You too, guys.
Okay, so we are on.
Mr. President, give me just a moment
Sure, take your
into
time.
order here.
Yep,
C29.
C29,
Yep.
dump truck.
Do I just come back on the next council meeting?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
C-29, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requesting an appropriation of $293,402 be made to the Public Works Capital Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. These funds are for the purchase of a new international 6-wheel dump truck and sander. So, I had a discussion here with the DPW director, Ray Racine, and he informed me that basically, and I can read this, that they're respectfully requesting an appropriation $293,402 be made to the Public Works Capital Outlay Expense Account, the amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. These funds are for the purchase of a new international 6-wheel dump truck sander. The current wait time for DPW trucks, such as this one, is now over 2 years. We have been advised by the local truck distributor that a truck has recently become available due to another community being unable to accept it. Since the length of time to secure additional vehicles is only expected to grow, we would like to take the opportunity to purchase this vehicle so we can continue to upgrade our fleet. These trucks are used all year long for a variety of public works activities, and keeping them well maintained and upgraded is crucial. So basically, the city is getting this windfall because it's another community that was in line for one that can't take it, and we got the cash money to pay right up front, and we can get this. And like Race, the DPW director said, these are going up in price very quickly. Every year they're getting more and more expensive. So if we had to wait another couple of years, we'd probably be talking another 20% on top of what we're already spending. He did indicate to me that, these trucks take a beating. They're, in salt all winter long. And there's, at least one of them right now that will immediately be retired once we get this one because it's in pretty rough shape. So it'd be my recommendation, Mr. President, that we grant C-29. I'll ask you check with members of my committee.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Tossi?
I agree.
You've heard a unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-29. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of granting C-29, please recognize the usual manner. Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, C-29 has been granted. Is there an order?
Yes, Mr. President, ordered that the sum of $293,402 be made to the Public Works Capital Outlay Expense Account, same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request to adopt the order. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the order, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Anyone opposed? The order is adopted by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to C-31.
C-31, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Request that an appropriation of $15,000 be made to the Emergency Management Expense Account, same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. These funds will be used to cover the cost of Code Red emergency notification system, which has increased over the years, as well as other departmental expenses such as electricity. I did have a chance to speak to Arthur, the Emergency Management Director.
He's been patiently waiting all night for
He's here.
$15,000.
He's earned his money.
And I had a discussion with him today. He indicated that about 11,000 of this is for Code Red, and the other part of it is for the electric. And Code Red, obviously, as it's been explained, is going up and up and up. And he also indicated to me, and I'm sure that we'll learn more about it as time goes on, but they're going to be looking for a different system because there's going to be some phasing out of this particular system. So we'll hear more about that later, I'm sure, but for now, it would be my recommendation that we grant C-31 to keep our funding up so that these systems can be maintained and the electric bills can continue to get paid. Nothing has changed with the usage of electricity there. It's just the rising costs. So it would be my recommendation that we grant C-31, and I'll ask you to check with members of my committee.
Councilor Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Tossi?
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-31. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of granting C-31, please recognize the usual manner. Very well, C-31 is passed by a vote of 9-0. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $15,000 be made to the Emergency Management Expense Account, same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request to adopt the order. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the order, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Any nays? No. The order is adopted by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to C-32.
C-32, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, respectfully requested an appropriation of $1,227.35 be made to the Permaline Corporation of New England out of the mayor's capital expense line in the general fund, the same amount to be transferred from the opioid stabilization fund. This is regarding the fact that they previously purchased 25 signs and have recently purchased an additional 25 signs to install throughout the community. These signs fall directly within the guidelines of the opioid settlement regulations, which allow for funding for public awareness and prevention initiatives. You might remember that the mayor, one way or another, he was buying the first 25 signs, and he did. And then he asked us if we would reimburse, since we could use it out of opioid money, and we did. And then he wanted another 25 signs, and one way or another, he was buying them, and he did. And we have the ability to do some accounting and take the money out of opioid. If not, they'll be paid out of where they've been currently paid out of, but it would be my recommendation that we account for this under opioid money and grant C-32.
You've heard the Councilor Cormier,
I agree.
Councilor Tosse.
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-32. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of granting C-32, please recognize the usual manner. Very well, C-32 is passed by a vote of 9-0. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $1,227.35 be made to the Permaline Corporation of New England out of the mayor's capital expense line in the general fund, the same amount to be transferred from the opioid stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request to adopt the order. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of adopting the order, please indicate by saying yea.
Yay.
Yay. Anyone opposed? The order is adopted by a vote of 9-0. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to legal affairs and 24-26.
24-26, Michael McEwen on behalf of Kurt Owanesian, plant manager of High Line Wall in 163 Pioneer Drive, Leominster, Mass. Request a petition to obtain an above-ground fuel storage license for a 35,000-gallon above-ground storage tank to replace the 10,000-gallon tank currently at 163 Pioneer Drive and enlarge the containment area. We had a public hearing earlier this evening on this. We did get a referral back from the Leominster Fire Department that I will read. This is from Robert Sidlow, dated Monday, December 8th, regarding referrals. The fire department has reviewed the application drawings and conducted a walkthrough for petition 2426 and is approved of granting the amended license for 163 Pioneer Drive. So that's good. We also heard from Mr. Roseberry that it was referred to DPW, but DPW doesn't think that they have anything to add in a referral. However, one member from the public did raise some questions about any EPA violations that the company might have. So my recommendation would be to give this further time, and we check so that we can check out the EPA website to see if there's anything local that's a problem.
Councilor Tosse?
I agree.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
You heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to give 24-26 further time and continue the public hearing. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please recognize the usual manner. All right, so I'm going to suggest for the hearing January 12th at 6:42 p.m. Okay?
What was that again? I'm sorry.
January 12th.
Right, got that.
6:42.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to
Yep.
326.
326, Glenn Eaton, Executive Director, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, request to amend the zoning ordinance to replace Article 15, accessory apartments, with a new Article 15 that complies with recently passed state law and make other changes to implement the new ordinance. We had a public hearing for this earlier in the evening. There wasn't, nobody from MRPC showed up to kind of walk us through or tell us what the changes were. This had gone to the planning board. We had Joseph Boyle from MRPC here a couple of months ago, walked us through the changes that would be consistent with the new state law. There were some changes that he was going to make, that when he made changes, they went to the planning board, came back to us, but it's not clear to me what the changes are. So my recommendation is to schedule a legal affairs committee meeting to go through this on our own and to continue the public hearing.
All right.
So further time in public hearing.
Do you want to do it on January 12th as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest, might as well just keep the 1 minute thing going so we can just keep
Absolutely,
moving.
43. Yep.
So I'm going to suggest January 12th at 6:43 p.m.
Yep.
And further time, and I'll check with Councilor Tosse.
I agree.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor, please recognize your usual manner. All right, so those are established. Moving on to 25-26, I think that's just a further time, right?
25, whoopsie, sorry. 25-26, I'll read the first paragraph, right? I can't not read.
Yeah, you don't have to read the whole one.
I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read the
Yeah.
first part of it.
Sure.
25-26, Attorney Jeffrey Avini, Dombrowski, Avini, and Bunnell, PC, request to amend Section 22-17 as to underlying zoning districts table of uses for the City of Leominster zoning ordinance as amended, and under the business uses table of uses in the multi-use MU1 underlying zoning districts, and change the use so designated as self-storage from N, not allowed, to special permit planning board, SPPB, planning board special permit required. Pursuant to the City of Leominster zoning ordinance, self-storage is characterized as a business use but is only allowed in the industrial zoning district. So we do have a public hearing scheduled for January 12, 2026 at 6:30 PM. So my recommendation would be for further time.
Very well. Council Tosse?
I agree.
Council Cormier?
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant 25-26 further time. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of further time, please recognize usual manner. Okay, that may be done. Moving on to city property and C-30.
Keep her on that side of the.
It's a sick day.
I don't know what's happening
Yeah.
on that side of the table, but
I was gonna
I'll
say,
tell you, I'm pretty glad I'm on this side tonight.
Yeah.
Carrie, there's an empty seat over here.
can I?
We apologize, huh? Let's see.
Do you want me to read that for you, Frank, to bail you out of that?
I can read it.
Huh?
Huh? I can
He's
read
on the
it.
committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's see. C-30, the city council of the city of Leominster on behalf of and pursuant to the authority granted by chapter 82, sections 21 to 24 and chapter 79 of the Massachusetts General Laws as amended, and any and every power and authority which is hereunto in any way enabling, take by eminent domain and temporary easements for any and all purposes for which the public ways are used for the city of Leominster, including without limitation for the construction, maintenance, and rights of way of sidewalks, drainings, utilities, and other structures or appurtenances, and or for any and all other purposes and uses for incidental or related thereto within parcels of lands located on or near Lancaster Street and Union Street as shown on a plan entitled 2025 Lancaster City Street Layout and Easement Plan, and a plan entitled 2025 Union Street Layout and Easement Plan, both dated in November 21, 25, and prepared by CGG Associates Incorporated, copies of which are on file with the city clerk, and said any plans may be amended and land within the 200 feet of said parcels, which temporary easements shall be for the term of 5 years, and in connection therewith, and adopt and execute an order of taking to acquire said rights and easements and award damages for the taking of owners identified in Schedule A attached, and the order of taking with the specific amounts awarded to each owner being set forth in Schedule B and attached to but not recorded, with the order of taking and any and all other documents related to thereto, and further take any and all other actions as may be necessary to appropriate to accomplish the foregoing. Wow, sorry.
Well done.
And we do have the plans, the documents referred to. Everybody, they got a copy of those, and my recommendation would be to grant C-30, and I ask that you check with the committee.
Council Robbins?
I agree.
Council Tosse?
I agree.
You heard the unanimous recommendation of the City Property Committee to grant C-30. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to do this by roll call, starting with Council Cormier.
Yay.
Council Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Council Arndinger.
Yay.
Council Noseworthy.
Yay.
Council Tosse.
Yay.
Council Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Council Robbins.
Yay.
Council Frida.
Yay.
And I'll be recorded as yay. C-30 has been granted by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to 26-26.
Another one, huh?
Yep. You want Council Robbins to read it? He's dying.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Petition 26-26, Richard M. Marchand requests to use the following city properties to host the 33rd Annual Johnny Appleseed Arts and Cultural and Multicultural Food Festival on Saturday, September 19th, 2026, in the heart of downtown Leominster. In the event of inclement weather or other unforeseen circumstances, they request approval for a postponement date on Saturday, September 26, 2026. To ensure the safety and enjoyment of all attendees, we respectfully request the following street and parking areas closure from 5 a.m. to approximately 7 p.m. on the days of the event. Street closures: Upper West Street from School Street to the intersection of Mechanic Street. Park Street, entire length. Main Street from the intersection of Merriam Avenue to Park Street, including the front of Monument Square. Parking lot closures: City Hall parking lot, adjacent parking lot next to City Hall. City parking lot between the First Baptist Church and the First Church Unitarian. This lot will be designated for handicapped parking and for individuals with health challenges to ensure accessible entry to the festival grounds.
Okay, I'll ship it back to the chairman. Do you have a recommendation?
The recommendation is to grant 26-26, and I ask you would.
Sure.
Okay.
Councilor Robbins?
Agreed.
And Councilor Tossi.
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the City Property Committee to grant 26-26. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please recognize usual manner. All right, that passes by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to new business and the first reading of an ordinance. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yep, 17-25, Susan Shalfo Zephyr, Counselor at Large, request to place no parking signs across the street from 59 to 63 Manchester Street apartment building. So this, we had a public hearing on. There was a few questions, I think, at the last meeting, and through the chair, the president. Have you resolved that?
I have no idea what's going on with this, honestly. Haven't talked to anybody. I know you mentioned to me that there was a gentleman named Fermani.
Yeah.
But I don't have his contact information. I haven't spoken to him. And
What about the mayor? The mayor was the one raising the
I haven't
the
spoken to the
issues.
mayor about it.
Oh, okay. Are you going to? Because
I can.
Okay. Well, the mayor raised the issue, which is
Right.
It's moot. We don't notify people for stop signs and street
Right.
signs and things of that nature. And Joseph Fermani, I gave you his name, I think, last time. Joseph Fermani. He lives in that neighborhood. He uses Manchester Street all the time. Anyways, long story short, he is the one that had reached out to me. And then because the mayor had raised some questions about, did you notify all the abutters? No, we
Right.
don't. So, so for the next meeting, would you be able to have that conversation so we can move
I
this
will.
along? Okay.
Okay.
So I guess my recommendation would be further time.
All right. Councilor Tossi?
I agree.
Councilor Cormier?
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant 17-25 further time. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right, so that'd be given further time. Moving on to second reading of an ordinance.
Yep. Second reading of an ordinance, 14-26. John Ferrer, Captain, 116 Central Street, Leominster Police Department, requests repealing Section 13-62, parking meter zones 2 hours, then amending Section 13-44, same, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. by adding the following. So I'll run down the list of streets. I'm not going to give all the detail, but if anybody really wants the detail, they can get it in the city clerk's office. Central Street, West Side, Central Street. So what this is doing is replacing parking meters with 2-hour parking signs. Central Street, West Side, Central Street, West Side, Central Street, East Side. Church Street from West Street to Colburn Court. Depot Square from Water Street to Merriam Avenue. Main Street, East and West Sides. Main Street, East Side, Main Street, West Side, Mechanic Street, North Side, Mechanic Street, South Side, Merriam Avenue, North Side, pardon me, Merriam Avenue, South Side, Park Street, West Side, Park Street, East Side, Pearl Street, North Side, Pearl Street, South Side, Pleasant Street, North Side, West Street, North Side, West Street, North Side, West Street, North Side, West Street, West Street on the north side, West Street on the south side, West Street, South Side. And these are from basically Main Street up to Gardner Place, I think, is the highest one, the most western. So my recommendation would be to adopt the second reading.
Councilor Tossi?
I agree.
And Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yes, please.
You've heard unanimous recommendation to grant the second reading of what was formerly 14-26. Is there any additional discussion?
No.
Seeing none, let's by roll call. Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor Arndinger?
Yay.
Councilor Noseworthy, I'm sorry.
Yay.
Councilor Tossi, I was just thinking, this could be your last vote. unless- You're not counting the adjournment.
I agree.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Robbins? Councilor Frida?
Yay.
I'll be recorded as yay. The second reading is granted by a vote of 9-0. Do we have anything under the community calendar? Councilor Frida?
Just a reminder that registration is open for the Mass Municipal Association Conference,
Okay,
Connect 351,
okay.
the last week of January.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
It's kind of the community calendar, but maybe not really. My comrade to my right, the Ward 1 Council, this is his last meeting.
It is.
So it is a community
What a
calendar.
doozy this one was.
How to go out on a high note.
Been looking forward to this.
Going out on a high note, Bob, doing the right thing. I just want to say that it's been a real pleasure, and I was not,
Everybody, it's been great.
yeah, but early on, we were on opposing sides.
But that's okay. It
And
worked out, yeah.
it did, no, but it worked out great. You've been a wonderful neighbor, you know, to have next to me, and I've really enjoyed working with you.
I
It's been
enjoyed
fun.
everybody. Thank you.
We're gonna miss you,
Thank
Bob.
so much.
Absolutely gonna miss you.
All right, well, back to the sort of community side of it. On next Saturday, the 13th, at the Drake House from 1 to 4, we'll be there doing, the Historical Society will be there doing house tours. Emergency Management will be there with hot chocolate and coffee. The ladies at the Historical Society are bringing cookies. And if you want to come witness some history, 1 to 4 on Saturday, the 13th. I just want to thank everybody for being as cooperative as you have been for the last 2 years with me as your city council president. We've been through some interesting times, from floods to controversial proposals. Seems like my tenure as city council president is always marked by something. I hope the next council president has smoother sailing. But I thank you all for your cooperation, your support. We haven't always agreed, but I think we've always managed to do the people's business one way or another, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Just a couple of other things.
Okay.
Not that I want to spend more time here with the way I feel, but tomorrow night, Tuesday, December 9th at 6 p.m., City Hall, up in the auditorium, they're doing a Chet's Joyful Players. They're presenting a Christmas Carol.
Oh, wow.
And I believe it's free of charge. I don't see anything about a cost. Also, the Leominster Colonial Band is here next Sunday, I think at 2 o'clock, free of charge, doing a nice presentation up in the auditorium as well. I know this past weekend the Montechusett Chorale did one to benefit Ginny's, and it was very well attended. So if people are looking for some things to do around town that are affordable, free is definitely affordable. There are many things. Check Facebook and websites. There's plenty of things to do around town, the family, to enjoy the holidays, and you don't have to break the bank.
All right, very good. Anybody else? Yes.
Just a reminder, on Thursday, the 18th, the Rotary Club is hosting their toy drive and food drive at the Manusnock, and all the counselors are invited. All the toys will be going to Jenny's, Spanish American Center, and the Catholic Charities. So,
Very well.
And the food will go to the Veterans Food Bank.
Okay, great. And if you didn't see the clerk's email, we have a Tri-City Council dinner on the 17th at Christina's. We're the host this year at 6 o'clock, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I hope to see you all there. I think we should let Councilor Tossi make the motion to adjourn if we're ready for that.
Yeah.
What do I say?
Let's adjourn. Move to adjourn. Move to adjourn. Seconded by Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. All in favor? All right. Great job, Bob.
All right,
Nice.
thanks, thank you all.
The Leominster City Council meeting is funded in part by DeCarolis Insurance Agency at www.decarolisInsuranceagency.com and by Avidia Bank at www.avidiabank.com.